Hello, everyone. Omni-sensei here with What If I Was Reborn in MHA with the Jujutsu Gacha system, Part 4. If you enjoy this content, please smash the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out the original story linked in the description. I hope you enjoy listening to it.
It's Nagant. Switch. I yelled as I switched out photo manipulation for projection sorcery. I glitched out of sight and reappeared across the roof. Hearing a whiz slice through the air, I jumped across several rooftops, dodging bullet after bullet. With each dodge, the bullets grew closer and closer to my position. Using CE, I increased my speed to clear the city block I was in within a flash. Damn it, I'm starting to regret using so much of my CE today. Using blood manipulation, I used a blood tendril to stop my movement, letting me narrowly miss a bullet that smashed through a glass window from the building beside me. Blood spread over my eyes in a mask as I activated flowing red scale, further boosting my movement speed and reflexes. In conjunction, I used construction to create armor around my vitals with my liquid metal. She's good. She's very good, I said as I ran through the city. I can't use my wings or summon new due to not having the 10 shadows equipped. Even if I did, being in the air would make it hard for me to change directions while also making me an easier target. That's something I can't afford to do with Nagant. While I was moving, I slowly worked my way towards her bird's nest. I needed to close the distance between us in order to take her down. However, that was easier said than done. Bang! A different direction. I looked to my left toward where the latest bullet came from. She must have moved. But how? She shouldn't have airwalk. A support item. 2 more shots rang out, and I saw the air shift in front of me. Even if I had Toji's perception, that didn't mean my body was equipped with the speed to keep up with it. Even now, my C-enhanced body alongside flowing red scale made me barely fast enough to dodge one bullet. Shit. This one's got a curve to it. Gah. Blood splattered behind me as a second bullet sliced through the side of my stomach where my armor didn't protect me. Damn it. If only I had Yuta's or Sukuna's CE. I would have been able to speed blitz her. My eyes zoomed off to where the bullets came from. I was able to finally see how Nagant was moving around. Strapped to her back was a compact jetpack that allowed her to boost from rooftop to rooftop while a grappling hook strapped to her left arm yanked her where she wanted to land. Not only that, but she also had some sort of hover boots that gave her a boost of speed. It seems like the HPSC isn't playing around. That gear looks expensive. I yelled toward Nagant. Her head twitched as she leveled her sniper and fired another shot. Show me what you've got. Projection, construction, and blood manipulation. Those are my current techniques after using my binding vow once. I needed to find a way to close the distance using these 3 techniques. Otherwise, it's game over. Let's see how well you keep up with me with this. I yelled as I pushed projection sorcery to its maximum, causing my body to glitch all over the city as I rushed toward her. General POV, how the hell is he so fast? Kaina yelled as she activated her jetpack to launch herself to the building across from her. While in midair, she saw Sukuna seemingly glitch out of reality as he quickly approached her position. He hasn't used that ice quirk of his either. Does that mean he really does have multiple quirks? Tracking down Sukuna was no easy task. After receiving her assignment 2 weeks ago, Kaina had poured every resource available to her into tracking the so-called King of Curses down. Seeing as how the task of finding and taking down Sukuna had failed to find him for several months, Kaina decided to take a different approach from actively searching for him. Instead, she focused her efforts on finding criminals and villains who met Sukuna's established MO. If you find them, then it would only be a matter of time before Sukuna would come knocking down their door. A door you had a pair of eyes trained on. Still, her plan wasn't flawless. Even after finding several criminals and villains that had a high potential of being his target, she always seemed to be one step behind Sukuna. That was until he made the mistake of creating a public execution in front of many civilians on a busy street. Luckily for Kaina, she was only a few blocks away from the incident. Raising her left arm, Kaina fired her grappling hook toward the building's concrete roof. Feeling it anchor, she quickly retracted the cable, sending her through the air with a jerk. Before she could crash into the ground, Kaina unclasped the grappling hook and activated her hover boots to slide across the entire length of the roof in 2 seconds. With a jump, Kaina raised her sniper arm and aimed. Her trained eyes scanned the sky, buildings, and rooftops before she saw a flicker of movement. Trusting her hard-earned instincts and skills, Kaina fired a shot toward where she knew her target would be. Bang! With her scouter, Kaina saw Sukuna raise his left arm. In an instant, a large plate of black liquid created a shield in front of his chest. Her bullet struck true and sent him skidding back. Coming to a stop, the black shield Sukuna created broke from the impact, causing him to look straight at her with a wide grin. "He's good. I'll give him that," Kaina muttered as she ripped off a lock of her hair. On command, her hair changed its shape into a long, sharp bullet she injected into her sniper arm. "I guess you don't get as famous as you did without the skills to back it up." Raising her rifle up, Kaina zeroed in on Sukuna's head. "Lady Nagant. Lady Nagant. Oh wow. Can I shake your hand?" A small boy from a group of children asked excitedly as they ran up to her. "Me, too. You're the best." "Heh. Sure. But only if you kids have been good," Kaina said as she turned away from the officer she was speaking with to offer the children her hand. Extending it, Kaina's eyes widened when she saw her arm covered in deep crimson. "This isn't the time to think about that," Kaina said as she watched her target disappear again. Her brief distraction had caused her to miss her opportunity. "Focus on the mission. Your last mission." Whoosh! At the sight of an incredibly fast-moving crimson spear, Kaina jerked her body back as she activated her support gear just in time to avoid several crashing blood and steel spears landing all around her. Shit! Kaina weaved in and out from the falling weapons before she heard the clattering sound of steel. The hell? Turning her head, she saw several chains clattering through the sky and between the buildings around her. Kaina spun in place with her rifle raised as she tried to find Sukuna amidst all the sounds and rushing chains around her. "Right here, Nagant." Spinning, Kaina fired her shot at the source of the voice. Her eyes grew wide when her bullet collided with a voice recorder, smashing it to pieces. A soft, almost inaudible tap behind her caused Kaina to freeze. The sound was barely audible, but to her, it might as well have been a booming detonation. Roaring, she spun around with her rifle half raised, but it was too late. "Checkmate," Sukuna muttered before he punched her. "Shimizu Sauta Poi." My fist met her stomach as I punched Nagant across the rooftop. Not stopping there, I rushed after her as she tumbled to the ground. Grabbing her by the front of her shirt, I pulled her to her feet and sunk my knee into her injured stomach. Plus 15 SP. Gar. Nagant grunted as spittle and blood flew out her mouth. Reaching back, I tore off her jetpack and threw it off the rooftop. She glared at me as soon as she recovered her bearings. With quick precision, she snapped out 2 left jabs at me. Moving side to side, I avoided her blows and kicked down her rising sniper arm back to the ground. "Lady Nagant," I said as I maintained a close distance between us. Using Wing Chun, I landed a series of strikes along her body. In a split second, I swiped my hand through the air and removed her grappling hook from her left forearm. I was wondering when those sorry excuses at the Safety Commission were going to send their attack dog. Plus 20 SP, I'm not Nagant didn't get to finish a sentence as I landed a left hook on her cheek. With a sharp stomp, I destroyed her left hover boot. "I'm not their attack dog." "Then tell me, why are you here?" Enhancing my fist with CE, I punched Nagant's right shoulder, causing her to scream out in pain. Lady Nagant was by no means a bad fighter. No, if anything, she was extremely skilled in hand-to-hand combat. She wouldn't be as famous as she was if she couldn't perform without her sniping quirk. No doubt a result of the Safety Commission's years of training. Unfortunately for her, I was much more skilled. Stumbling back, Nagant managed to escape from the close range we had. With a rebellious roar, she raised her right arm despite the agonizing pain in her bruised shoulder and aimed the barrel of her shortened sniper right at my face. Shit. I messed up. I screamed in my head as I stared down the barrel that was only 30 centimeters away from my face. Bang! Everything around me slowed to a crawl as I watched the bullet leave its muzzle. There was at most half a second to react before the bullet shot through my head. The spinning pink and indigo bullet rippled through the air as it was a hair's breadth away. Switch. In a microsecond, I exchanged blood manipulation for the limitless technique. Using the limitless without the 6 eyes was not an impossible task to accomplish. No, it certainly was plausible to be used. However, using the technique without the 6 eyes' godly control of cursed energy made activating the neutral limitless, infinity, an extremely draining move. It was as if one were to try to collect a cup of water with a mesh strainer. It was an impossible task. This means that once I activate the limitless, I'll be throwing away my already depleted CE at record speeds. Crack. Plus 50 SP, W-Watt. Nagant yelled as her bullet was stopped an inch away from my head by some invisible barrier. Crap. My CE. I instantly felt my reserves begin to plummet with incredible speed. It's barely been half a second, but I already feel my CE drop by 35%. Without wasting any more time, I slipped out of the bullet's path and deactivated the limitless. I ignored the feeling of exhaustion and rushed Nagant with pure, raw speed. Due to the shock of seeing her seemingly sure-kill bullet stop mid-air, Nagant was still frozen in shock and unprepared for the powerful blow I landed on her face, sending her flying back and over the roof's edge. Nagant was wide-eyed as she felt gravity take hold of her body. Closing her eyes in acceptance, she let her body plummet. That is until I shot to the edge of the rooftop and wrapped my fingers around her left wrist, stopping her from falling. She opened her eyes to look down at the dark, sparkling city streets below before looking up at me. Slowly, her indigo eyes grew wide in surprise as she looked over my exposed face. The black hood that usually hid my identity had blown off in my burst of speed in order to reach her before she fell. Plus 50 SP, you're just a kid, Nagant said with horror. Her eyes trembled as she examined my features. I almost killed a kid. I'm not a kid, I said as I looked down at her hanging form. I'm almost 16. She remained silent before she looked over to her right arm. I kept quiet as she had her internal struggle before she sighed. Go ahead. Drop me. End this already. Do you want to die? I asked. I don't know, Nagant muttered. A strong breeze blew past us, tousling her long hair to the side. But it doesn't matter what I want. I tried to kill you. I'm sure you've killed for less. So go ahead. I frowned at her answer and sighed. Lady Nagant. A tragic character who was groomed by the Hero Public Safety Commission to become its ruthless executioner in the original storyline. She reached her breaking point when she was ordered to kill 2 heroes and instead killed the commission chairman. This act led to her imprisonment in Tartarus. Eventually, she was used by All for One to capture Izuku for him. While it seemed that the event where she killed the chairman had yet to happen, Nagant still had that dead, lifeless look in her eyes. She was nearing her breaking point. If left alive after this, Nagant would indeed proceed with killing the man who turned her into an unstoppable killing machine, killing the once hopeful young girl with dreams of grand heroics and serving the public. Nagant. Raising her head at my voice, the woman stared up at me with defeat. I have a proposition for you. Plus 15 SP. A proposition? You want me to make a deal with a serial killer like you? Nagant said as she looked down at the far-off ground. I suppose I don't have much of a choice with my current situation. I smiled in amusement at her response. Trust me. I think this will work out for the both of us. A few weeks later. There it is. UA. I've only seen it from far away, but it's so much more amazing in person. I rolled my eyes at how Izuku and Keiko were geeking out over UA's main entrance, which happened to be UA's famous UA barrier. The barrier's primary purpose was to keep out those without a staff ID, student ID, or special permission pass to enter. Around us were several dozen hopeful students making their way in through the gates with their special permission passes. Passes that Himiko and I have in our pockets. I was expecting more, Himiko muttered as she rested her chin on my shoulder, a bored look on her expression. More. Keiko yelled in disbelief. Rushing over to Himiko, Keiko grabbed her shoulders and began to rock her back and forth. Himiko-chan. This is UA. The greatest and most prolific hero school in Japan. You can't understand how jealous I am that you and Su-chan get to go before me. Relax, Keiko, I muttered as I picked up Keiko with little issue, saving Himiko, who looked dizzy from all the shaking. Remember, we still need to pass the entrance exam. Besides, we're here for Gen Ed. So who cares about all that extra hero crap? 16 times 5 is equal to plus 80 SP. What did he say? Why is that loser even here then? Such disrespect. Did he say Gen Ed? He must be weak if he can't even think of taking the hero course exams. Izuku looked nervous from the annoyed looks and comments I received from my comment from those around us. I, on the other hand, didn't care about their little opinions and placed Keiko down. Alright, you two need to go home now. I looked over them both with a pointed look, causing them to look disappointed. I said I'd take you to the entrance to look at the building. Now that I have done that, you both have to go home. Himiko and I need to go take that exam. Plus 10 SP, plus 5 SP. It's okay, Keiko-chan, Izuku-kun. You'll both be attending the school in another year. Oh, I can't wait for all of us to walk home together. Himiko smiled as she did a little excited dance. I rubbed my hair and grabbed her wrist to begin pulling her towards the large H-shaped building that was the school. Go on, you two. Be sure to text me when you get home. Keiko and Izuku nodded before waving goodbye. Okay. You two got this. Keiko yelled with a thumbs up. Good luck, Sauta-san. Toga-san. Izuku called out, a little more subdued. Himiko waved at them while I nodded with a slight grin. Turning up at the building, I noticed that the anime didn't do it justice. It was a massive building made up of hundreds of glass panels. The school grounds themselves were mind-boggling in scale, going off the complimentary map they gave to all the student hopefuls. It made me wonder just how much money funded this place. Jumping over beside me, Himiko wrapped her arms around my right arm with a happy smile. This caused several of the students around us to blush at our bold behavior on school grounds. Let's do our best, Sauta-kun. Yeah, let's do our best. Would it kill you to sound a little excited? Maybe. Some would imagine that the entrance exam for one of Japan's most prodigious schools would be rather difficult. So, when I went over all of the questions from the rather thick booklet that was our test packet, I came to one conclusion. This exam ain't shit. Sure, for anyone with a room temperature IQ, I could see this test being a colossal challenge. But for someone like myself, this was a breeze. After taking 15 minutes out of the 2-hour exam, I stood up and submitted my booklet to the astonished overseer sitting behind a long table. Several dozen other students remained in the large hall, still working on their exams, and they looked at me with expressions of confusion or amusement. Do you have a question? A woman dressed in an ordinary suit and tie asked. The man sitting beside her eyed me with annoyance. He probably thought I wasn't taking this seriously or something. The joke's on him, I actually wasn't taking this seriously. Nope. I'm all done. I said with my hands in my pockets. I looked around the table in front of them with curiosity. What's next? Another packet or something? Plus 5 SP. No. For the general education course, all you need to do is pass the written exam with at least an 85 to 90% score. The woman said slowly, as if talking to a dimwit. Would you like to take another look at your exam? Nope. I smiled at the woman, causing her eyebrow to twitch. If that's it, I'll be leaving now. Plus 5 SP. Plus 5 SP. Not waiting for her or the annoyed man beside her to speak, I left the testing room and looked around at the massive hallways. Seeing that no one was around to stop me from wandering, I decided to go ahead and explore the place. Walking around unimpeded, I strolled by several empty classrooms, lecture halls, gymnasiums, and even some bathrooms. Some rather unique and clean bathrooms. While extremely large and impressive looking, UA was rather bland. Then again, the school was empty today in order to hold the entrance exams for all the new student hopefuls. Walking around a corner, I paused when I finally found the school's expansive cafeteria. Sniffing the air, I picked up a rather pleasant aroma and strolled into the cafeteria. Off to the side was a relatively small line of people grabbing some food. Seeing the iconic blue, white, and red gym uniforms of UA, I figured these people were students grabbing a bite to eat. Shrugging, I walked over to the line and grabbed a lunch tray. Stepping beside one of the UA students, I waited for my turn. "What will it be, young man?" the chef behind the counter asked. He was wearing a cooking apron and a chef hat, as well as a mask that covered his face. He also wears white gloves and shoes. There's also a tube that connects from his mouth to his back. Blinking, I quickly realized that this was the pro hero, Lunch Rush. Chef's choice. I said with an easygoing grin. Lunch Rush looked surprised at first before nodding in excitement. Plus 15 SP. Now, that's something I don't hear too often. Very well. Leave it to me. Lunch Rush said before his hands moved in a blur. In no time, he placed a mouth-watering bowl of nebyaki udon. Please enjoy. Believe me, I will. After paying for my food, I found a lone spot on a long lunch table and dug into the incredibly delicious bowl of noodles. I was so lost in my meal that I failed to notice someone plopping down beside me with a tray of their own food. Hello there. You're a new face. A girl with long light blue periwinkle hair and blue eyes said as she turned to me with a wide smile. Hey, did you know you have this bad vibe around you? Oh, how'd you get that scar on your neck? You're not wearing a school uniform or a gym uniform. Are you here for the entrance exams? Plus 10 SP. Hey. I muttered as I held up some noodles in my chopsticks. Snapping out of my bliss from the delicious food, I realized who was sitting beside me. It was Heido Najira. My patience is being tested. After finishing my pleasant lunch, Najira apparently took it upon herself to continue following me around. When I asked her why, she said that she was extremely curious as to why I radiated such a negative vibe. So why did you choose UA to go to anyway? Oh, you're a year younger than me, but you're almost as tall as Tagata-san. You must have some really good genetics. Najira said as she walked beside me. Shouldn't you be anywhere else, Heido? I stopped walking and turned to the bright girl with a deadpan stare. She tilted her head in confusion before shaking her head. Plus 5 SP. I don't think so. Nope. I'm totally free. There you are, Heido-san. Najira and I turned to look at another student with pointy elf-like ears. He has messy, dark indigo hair, which sticks out behind his head, and thin, tired-looking eyes that are partially covered by his bangs. His shoulders were hunched over as he walked over to us. The man, the myth, the bundle of anxious nerves, it's Sunita. A Majiki-kun. Najira jumped as she walked over to a Majiki Tamaki, another member of UA's future Big Three. What are you doing here? I thought you were training with Tagata-san. Pausing, Tamaki looked over at me before hunching over and avoiding any eye contact. Looking closer, I saw his shoulders tremble slightly. I was, but Mirio asked me to get you. There's something he wants to test out that he needs your help with. Tamaki said in a hard-to-hear voice. Oh, really? But I was having so much fun with my new friend. Najira whined before brightening up. Let me introduce you, a Majiki-kun. This is Shimizu Sauta, a soon-to-be first year. Hello. Tamaki muttered, still refusing to meet my eyes. Sup, I said to him before turning to Najira. We're friends. The best. Najira nodded and ran over to Tamaki. I'll find you again once you officially join UA, Shimizu-kun. I have to go help Tagata-san. Bye-bye. Plus 10 SP, plus 10 SP. Before Tamaki or I could say a word to one another, she grabbed him by his wrist and all but dragged him through the hallway. I stood rooted in place until they were out of sight. She's a bit annoying. But she's also cute. I muttered. I guess that evens out. We're home. Himiko called out as she threw her book bag down onto the floor after she took off her shoes. Welcome home. Jin called out from deep in the house. I followed behind her as she ran through the main hall toward the living room. Kaina Onichan. That exam was so hard. Entering the living room, I watched as Himiko jumped into the arms of Tsutsumi Kaina. otherwise known as Lady Nagant. Kaina had an uncomfortable expression as she rubbed Himiko's back from where she was sitting on the couch. She turned to me with a look that asked for help, but I only shrugged my shoulders. There. Himiko smiled and pressed her face into Kaina's chest as she deepened her hug with the older woman. Kaina blushed slightly from having Himiko push her breasts around with her head. Why is the extremely dangerous hitman, Lady Nagant, in my home? I can hear you ask. You see, after our showdown in the streets of Shinjuku, I had proposed to Kaina that she abandon the HPSC in order to come work under me. I promised her that if she did, I would help her take down the corrupt organization that was once meant to protect and serve the public before falling to a more sinister regime that pushed Kaina and other young, hopeful people to become what were essentially assassins. In return, Kaina would offer me help whenever I asked for it, which hopefully wouldn't happen too often. I didn't want to push the traumatized woman any further than she already was. At first, she was hesitant to join the infamous Sukuna, but after explaining to her what I truly did and stood for, she finally agreed. It seemed that the HPSC had embellished my reputation to the point that I was some sort of boogeyman to everyone who knew my name. Kaina was worried that after betraying the HPSC, they would send someone to hunt her down. However, I assured her that she would be completely safe under my protection. The multiple layers of security at my large home would provide her with the peace of mind she needs to heal her worn-down spirit. Upon hearing we had a new housemate, Himiko had all but glowed in happiness at the prospect of another woman living with us. She even began treating Kaina like the big sister she never had, much to the older woman's embarrassment. Kaina struggled to deny Himiko, most likely due to her weakness against children. She could have done without Himiko's excessive touchiness, though. Who would have thought the extraordinarily lethal and dangerous Lady Nagant had a soft spot for kids? When it came to Jin, the two got along well, even if Kaina thought he was a bit odd. Every now and then, one of Jin's jokes cracked through her mask of indifference and toughness, giving us a glimpse of her warm, softer side. My relationship with her was one of mutual respect. Despite her seeing me as a supposed kid, she knew I handled myself like a grown adult. When I wanted to, at least. I wasn't sure if I would call our relationship friendship. I knew that we had an odd connection due to our bloody history. We understood one another in a way no one else could. Sauta, you're finally here, Jin said as he looked up from the large pot he was working on. How was your exam? You botched it, didn't you? I think it went all right, I said as I took a seat on one of the stools beside the kitchen island. I shouldn't have anything to worry about when it comes to getting in or not. The exam was easy. Plus 15 SP, easy. Himiko shot up, much to Kaina's relief. That exam was one of the hardest things I've ever done. There were also a bunch of stupid questions involving heroics, too. Well, it is a hero school, Kaina said as she picked up a book and resumed her reading. Even if you're not in the heroics course, don't be surprised if they sprinkle in some topics involving heroes. Yeah, what she said, Jin said as he pointed at Kaina. Behind him, the pot began to boil over. Oh no, my soup. I guess. Himiko pouted before she sat against Kaina on the couch. Still, I think it should be pretty fun going to UA. I still fail to see how going there benefits you, Sauta-san. Kaina looked over at me with a confused expression. All you're doing is placing yourself in unnecessary danger. Your disguise is just a hood and some magic tattoos, after all. Relax, Kaina. I have my reasons. I smiled lazily at the woman as I tried some of Jin's soup. Besides, haven't you ever heard of hiding in plain sight? I'll be fine. Kaina didn't look convinced, but she dropped the subject nonetheless, choosing to instead focus on her book. Just as I was about to go to my library to grab a book of my own, I felt a strong pull in my mind. Stopping mid-step, I closed my eyes and focused my senses. In no time, I opened my eyes to see through the eyes of one of my crows. Looking down, I watched a rough-looking man with several children's toys step inside a black sedan. After placing all the newly bought toys in the back seat, the man reached over to the passenger seat, where a black plague mask sat underneath a coat. Found you. All right, everyone. Listen up. I stepped before a large printout of an expansive connecting business building tucked away between several other homes and buildings. Surrounding the extensive building was a tall gate with only one entrance at the front. Several other pictures were taped below it, showing the surrounding empty homes and other structures. Himiko, Jin, Kaina, and I were all in one of my extra rooms, which I had transformed into a small war room. A long table lined with 3 chairs on each side stood in the middle of the room. This here is the Shai Hasaikai compound. It's run and operated by the 8 Precepts of Death, headed by Overhaul. It's the newest Yakuza boss. I said as I pointed at a blurry image of a man with brown hair dressed in an oversized green jacket. The man's most standout feature was the red and gold plague mask over his nose and mouth. In the picture, Overhaul is walking through one of the building's connecting hallways, followed by a man dressed in a long white raincoat and holding his hood up. A black and gold plague mask sat over his face. In his arms was a small girl who seemed to try to shrink into herself. Behind him is his right-hand man, Chronastasis. In his arms is our main objective, Eri. The girl they're experimenting on to create this quirk-destroying drug, Kaina said with narrowed eyes as she held the red cartridge bullet between her fingers. Sitting beside her, Himiko shifted uncomfortably as she looked at Eri with a sad expression. Jin leaned forward on the table, his usual loud personality silent. I nodded before pointing to each photo of Overhaul's 8 bullets. That's right. That bastard has been slicing Eri and using her quirk to fashion a new line of quirk-erasing bullets. Until recently, one of my other targets shot me with one to erase my quirk. Considering that was the first time I've seen the drug being used, it's safe to say Overhaul has a working prototype he's giving criminals to use. I said as I motioned at the bullet in Kaina's grasp. Unfortunately for them, it didn't affect you, thanks to your cursed energy. Jin said as he punched the air in front of him. The fool. Right, that negative energy of yours, Kaina muttered as she looked at me thoughtfully. It still amazes me how only you can use such a unique power source. Not to mention the seemingly endless abilities it gives you. It's a little unfair if I'm being honest. Plus 10 SP. Plus 10 SP, plus 10 SP. Sukuna-kun is basically a walking cheat code, Himiko said. That's right. That means I won't have to worry about being shot by those bullets and losing my abilities. You 3, however, still can lose your quirks if you do get shot. I walked over to the map that was sitting on the table and pointed at the building's main entrance. For that reason, I will be entering in first while loudly announcing my presence. Once I've gotten the compound's attention, Himiko and Jin will move in after me to look for Eri with the help of my scout rabbits. Moving my finger across the map, I ended up pointing to a building a few blocks away. Kaina, you're to provide them cover fire once they have a hold of Eri. While I'm confident I can take down most of Overhaul's men, I'm not blind to think some could slip through and chase after them. You'll also stop any reinforcements from entering the compound. Plus 10 SP. Consider it done, Kaina said with a nod. Himiko. I turned to the blonde girl. Thanks to the modifications I made to your outfit, you should be able to make full use of your quirk to bypass their defenses once I make my entrance. You'll disguise yourself as one of the Yakuza so you can search for Eri unimpeded. No problem. I'll find Eri-chan and snatch her from right beneath their noses. What about me? What about me? Jin said as he raised his arm like an excited student. What's my task? Jin, you'll be Himiko's shadow. Follow her in her disguise and take out any of Overhaul's underlings through the compound. You'll also create 2 clones of me to act as the 2's backup. You need to make sure you have a clear escape route out of the building once Himiko has secured Eri. Because once they realize she's missing, they're going to come after her like rabid dogs. Plus 10 SP. You got it. Leave it to me. I'm impressed you gathered all this information in such a short amount of time, Kaina said as she looked over all the intel in the room. In my opinion, those crows of yours are probably your most impressive ability. It's all thanks to Nanami's hard work. That crow is the reason we finally caught sight of one of Chisaki's men. I gave her a smile and nodded. Yeah, there's no better intelligence gathering team than my crows. Now then, let's go over each of the Overhaul's bullets and what they can do. General POV. Pain. All Eri knew was pain and fear. Ever since her mother disowned her after she accidentally made her father disappear with her quirk, Eri had been subjected to dozens of experiments by that cruel man, Chisaki. Her body had been sliced and ripped apart so many times that she no longer knew the total number. But what she did know was the deep, intense pain she felt every time she was brought into that room. Even as she sat in her large, dark room, Eri was terrified. The toys Chisaki's men bought for her were strewn all around, ignored by her. There was no joy to be found in them. Only fear. Lying on her side, Eri curled herself into a ball as tears streamed down her face. The bandages tied around her arms and legs itched as she held herself in an attempt to find some comfort. But whenever some of her bare skin touched her bandages, she was quickly reminded that there was no escape from the pain. "Mommy," Eri whispered. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that to Daddy." Closing her eyes, Eri's mind worked against her and replayed the memories of her father screaming as his body was rewound back into nothing. Eri could only stand in shock as she looked over her father's scattered clothes. She was only brought out of her numb confusion once her mother began to scream. "I'm so sorry." Holding herself tightly, Eri made a weak wish within her mind. Not to escape her current situation, but for someone to hold her and comfort her. To make all her pain, fear, and guilt go away. In the eerie silence of her dark room, Eri cried herself to sleep. Shimizu Sauta POV. "Is it done?" I heard a sigh from the other end of my phone. "Yeah, we're currently getting the last resident in the ward out. We're still working on getting the next ward to move, but it'll take some time." Detective Yoichi said. "You want to tell me what's going on over there?" I grinned at the man's curiosity as I looked down at the large compound below. Since this was Yakuza territory, I didn't have to worry about civilians getting in the way of our operation due to all the surrounding buildings being empty. They were all a front set up by Overhaul to keep everyone away from his base of operations. Evacuating everyone else close by was just a cautionary step. After a quick fly-through with my crows, I was sure that no one who didn't belong here was within a 100-meter range of the compound. "I told you, didn't I?" I said lowly. "There's going to be a grand light show." Hanging up the phone, I raised my right hand up and held up my middle and pointer fingers. "Emerge from darkness, blacker than darkness. Purify that which is impure." Above the compound, a black slime-like substance appeared over the sky and crawled down toward the ground. It extended out 30 meters from the compound radius. Once my veil was up, I lifted my hands and clenched them together to activate my latest technique. Maximum output. Forest encirclement. General P. Dressed in a modified version of her hero costume, Kaina had her sights trained on the far-off compound with a steady eye. Floating above her was Jello. The Shikigami was there to act as Kaina's sentinel while she kept overwatch over the compound. Suddenly, everything around the compound began to shake uncontrollably as several hundred roots shot out of the ground to form a wall all around the compound, trapping everyone within the ring of plant life. "So that's the bang he was talking about," Kaina muttered as her direct line of sight into the building was left unimpeded. "Show off." Off within the Shai Hasaikai compound, Kai looked around in confusion as his surroundings began to tremble. Turning to his second-in-command, Kai saw the man try to remain on his feet as everything shook. "What is this?" Kai roared in anger as he rushed out of his office. As he struggled to balance himself, Kai finally left the room and looked out of the hallway window. What? As far as he could see, his compound was surrounded by thick roots that seemed to reach the skies themselves. "Overhaul!" Harry yelled as the trembling finally began to subside. "Are we being attacked?" Kai glared at the roots outside and spun on his feet. Speed walking, Kai and Harry made their way through the compound. "Move the boss out of the compound at once. When he's safe, gather all our research and get it all to Site B." Kai growled out. Harry nodded and lifted his phone to make the necessary call, only to find that his signal was jammed. "Our communication has been jammed." Kai glared at Harry and quickened his pace. "Then go on foot. I'll grab Eri." Shimizu Sautapu. Landing in front of the compound's front gate, I lifted my leg and broke down its doors. Rushing toward the front doors, I lifted my hand and sent a ball of fire crashing through them. Several grunts of pain yelled out as my attack blew the doors off their hinges. Stepping inside, I looked down at a few Yakuza grunts sprawled out on the floor. 5 times 7 is equal to plus 35 SP. Sorry, I'm not taking my shoes off, I said and made a hand sign. Rabbit escape. Rising from below were 6 dozen rabbits, spreading apart. They all gathered into 6 teams of 12. In front of each squad was a lone rabbit squad leader. They turned to me with curious expressions. Find Eri and then lead Himiko and Jin to her. Nodding, they all scampered throughout the hall. I watched some open a few doors while others jumped into the ventilation system. I waited a few moments before I heard 2 pairs of footsteps behind me. Himiko and Jin looked around the ruined front doors and then at the knocked out or dead men on the ground. Plus 10 SP. Plus 10 SP. What an entrance, Jin said as he raised his hands up to create 2 perfect clones of myself. They turned to one another and shrugged before they tried to summon one of my Shikigami. That's odd. One of the twice clones said. I can't feel any CE within me. That's because you're twice clones, I said to them, causing them to nod and accept their situation. Which made sense. I was pretty used to having copies of myself. They were mainly here to provide Jin and Himiko with some extra muscle. This one will do, Himiko said as she crouched next to one of the Yakuza thugs. Using her new blood extraction system that I created for her, she began to drain out a cup of blood from the man below. With a smile, Himiko then drank the blood. Jin and I watched as her body morphed to resemble the Yakuza member perfectly, except for the gear she wore, which was now strapped to the man. See, I told you I had to be naked for this to be perfect. Himiko's new low voice whined. Yeah, no. I'm not having you walk around in the nude. I said before the 3 of us heard several running footsteps approaching our position. I'll clear a path. I already have my rabbits searching all throughout the compound. Once they find Eri, one of them will come find you. Okay. Copy that. Nodding at them, I slid my hands in my pockets and walked over toward the quickly approaching group of Yakuza thugs. Scanning their group, I saw that none of the 8 bullets were with them. Grinning, I stomped my foot and sent a wave of sharp roots that shattered through the floor toward them. My newest diamond tier curse technique, Disaster Plants, belonged to the Disaster Curse, Hanami. This technique allows the user to form and control a variety of cursed flora. Its capabilities are normally initiated telepathically, activating the technique next to the user or near a target, but it can also be deployed from a user's body. The plants created by this technique can vary in size, shape, and physiology. Anything from simple flowers to giant wooden roots can be formed. The flora of the technique is, however, still made from cursed energy, meaning that curse-like plants can be created quickly and deactivated instantly. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to absorb the life energy from the plant life around me due to lacking the large red flower that Hanami had on their shoulder. While disappointing, it wasn't that big a deal. The large group of Yakuza thugs all tried to come to a stop at the sight of the incoming wave of wooden spikes. Unfortunately for them, they were too slow to evade my attack. One by one, they were all quickly skewered by my sharp wooden spikes in a wave of blood and violence. Grinning at their defeat, I slowly made my way through the compound. 13 times 25 is equal to plus 325 SP. Now then, come and get me. You dare attack the Shai Hasaikai. I grinned at the 3 Yakuza standing in my way. Those 3 were Yu, Setsuno Toya, and Tabe Soromitsu of the 8 bullets. Yu is a tall, muscular man with shadowed eyes and a shaved head. His choice of mask was a simple medical mask that covered his mouth, unlike the signature beak-like mask worn by the rest of the 8 bullets. Toya had chin-length golden blonde hair that was parted to his left to obscure his right eye. A beak-shaped plague mask rested over his mouth and nose. Finally, Soromitsu wore a ragged burlap sack mask, unlike his fellow bullets, which covered his entire head and was held by a rope knot around his neck. The mask has 2 openings from where Soromitsu's eyes are visible and a stitched smile. It's the 3 that fought Tamaki. Heh. Answer me, damn it. Toya yelled, his eyes burning with anger. Let's see. A man who can snatch any one item he wants while another can sprout crystals from his body. And then there's you, ugly. All you do is eat. I said as I pointed to each one of them, causing their expressions to grow panicked after I announced their quirks. Plus 5 SP, Plus 5 SP. Plus 5 SP. How do you know this information? Yu said carefully, his expression cautious. Did one of our men talk? That doesn't really matter at this point. I began walking towards them with a growing smile. Flames came to life all around me as miniature volcano heads grew all around the walls. After all, you three are all dying today. General Pyo. Running through the halls, Himiko swung open each door she came across with a bang. With another bang, she looked around the room full of surprised Yakuza thugs with annoyance. Damn it. She said in the low voice of her current Yakuza disguise. Let's keep moving. Himiko nodded at twice-cloned Sukuna as the two continued running through the hallway, leaving behind several confused thugs. What the hell? Was that Fujimoto? Since when does he wear glasses? One of the thugs asked as they stepped out of the room to watch the disguised Himiko and TC Sukuna run away. Yeah, it was. But who the hell was that guy? Hello. Jin shouted from behind the group. Spinning around, the small group of thugs turned to see Jin and another Sukuna clone standing a few meters away. Get ready to get your teeth kicked in. It'll only hurt for a second. The small group of thugs never stood a chance at the combined might of Jin and TC Sukuna as they dispatched them all with precision, speed, and skill. Turning a corner, Himiko and her partner came to a halt as a small white rabbit waved its little arms at them. Did you find her? Himiko asked with a smile. At the rabbit's quick nods, Himiko pumped her hands in victory as she released her disguise. Reaching behind her, she grabbed her cat mask and slipped it over her face. Lead the way then. You go on ahead, Himiko. TC Sukuna said as Himiko turned to see a man with a black plague mask and a furry vest. Behind him were several other Yakuza thugs holding various kinds of weapons. I'll hold off these clowns. I can help go. TC Sukuna said as he slid into a loose fighting stance. Remember, I'm just a clone. You two punks really think I'd let you go? Sakaki Deidoro yelled sluggishly. He raised a large green bottle of soju and began chugging the drink. Have a little taste of my quirk wham. I may not be as fast as the original. TC Sukuna said as he slammed his right fist into Deidoro's stomach, causing the lanky man to throw up all his alcohol, momentarily stunning the man. But this should be more than enough for you, sorry Sax. Himiko didn't waste another second and sprinted after the rabbit. Good luck, Sukuna-kun. Don't worry about me. Say very. Shimizu Sautapu. Deciding to pick up the pace, I rushed through the hallways, sending waves of sharp roots and balls of fire through the compound. Several of Overhaul's common thugs tried to get in my way, but they all ended up being nothing but a minor inconvenience. Coming to a stop, I looked around the large open room I ended up in. My eyes came to a halt at the sight of two plague mask-wearing individuals standing in the center. Rapper Kendo and Tengai Hikiji. Kendo is a huge, muscular man with long, light brown hair. He is wearing a tattered t-shirt and dark pants covered by a light blue tunic and is decorated with 2 belts. He also sported a pair of gloves with leather straps that covered his knuckles with metal. Hikiji wore a traditional dark-colored yukata with a pair of jita on his feet, a long white piece of cloth acting as a belt around his waist. On his face was a plain brown plague mask strapped to his face with 3 belts, one down his forehead and one on each side of his face, that also covered his ears like mufflers. I've heard of you, Hikiji said with malice. Sukuna, the underworld's boogeyman. Tell me, King of Curses, what has the Shai Hasaikai done to incur your wrath? Plus 5 SP, who flipping cares? Let's fight, King. Kendo yelled in excitement as he punched the air in front of him. Fight me like a real man. No weapons. Just our fists and fighting spirit. What has your little loser group done? I said, extenuating the word loser. How about torturing a child? That's sufficient reason for you. Plus 5 SP. Plus 5 SP, I see. So your goal is to take the girl. Yeah, that and to kill each and every one of you. I said as I raised my hands into a brand new hand sign. You said you wanted a good fight? Well, let's see how you handle this, then. Funeral Tiger. Rising from the shadows behind me was a 3-meter-tall muscular tiger. It stood on 2 powerful hind legs covered in black and red fur. With its anthropomorphic physique, Funeral Tiger flexed its arms as it walked around me. Its long, sharp fangs shone in the light as it roared loudly, shaking the very room in its fury. +5 SP. +5 SP. What was that? Hekiji yelled as he and Kendo looked around wildly for the source of the noise. That was one of the hardest Shikigami I have ever subdued, I said as I threw a pair of Moki's cursed tool glasses at them. Here. To make things somewhat fair. Confused but open for anything, Kendo ripped off his plague mask goggles in favor of slipping in the glasses. Rapper. You fool. This could be some sort of trick. +15 SP. Amazing. Kendo muttered in awe as he laid his eyes on the large, muscular Shikigami. A large grin spread over Kendo's face as he punched his fists together. Now, this will be a fight for the ages. Rushing in simultaneously, Kendo and Funeral Tiger met in the center of the room. Their massive fists collided together, sending out an enormous shockwave around them. Confused as to why his partner was seemingly attacking the air in front of him, Hekiji tentatively placed the glasses over his eyes. Seeing the large Shikigami, the Yakuza member stepped back in shock. Pretty impressive, isn't it? I said as I watched Kendo and Funeral Tiger enter a pure hand-to-hand battle. It took me a month of careful planning to be able to subjugate that one. Now, he may not be Mahoraga, but Funeral Tiger isn't something to take lightly. Yes. Yes. This is it. This is the fight I've always dreamed of. Kendo said as his face was punched violently to the side by a mean hook. In retaliation, Kendo swung a powerful uppercut into Funeral Tiger's stomach, sending the Shikigami back slightly. Growling in anger, Funeral Tiger roared and spun its massive left arm for a wild haymaker that Kendo took on like a champ. Blood exploded from the large gash on the top of his skull, but he paid it no mind. Instead, Kendo began to unleash a torrent of punches at Funeral Tiger's chest. Grah! Funeral Tiger roared as it swiped its 5 sharp claws through Kendo's chest. Having moved back in time, the large brawler was able to avoid a lethal blow. Claws. Kendo roared in anger before shrugging. I suppose those are part of you. I'll allow it. This guy is the textbook definition of a battle maniac. Rapper. Watch out, don't you dare interfere with this fight. Kendo spun back to glare at Hekiji, stopping the man from activating his quirk. If you do, I'll kill you myself. How about I just do that now? Blurring in front of Hekiji, I swung my katana through the air and watched it bounce off a round, golden barrier. Stepping back, I lazily looked inside to see Hekiji looking at me unimpressed. Did you really think it was going to be goo? Hekiji stopped speaking as blood spewed out of his mouth. Looking down, his eyes widened when he saw a large wooden spike spear through his chest. +25 SP. Yes. Yes, I did think it was going to be easy. I said with a grin while pointing at the ground. You see, you barrier types like to protect the area around you on the surface. But you never stop to think about what's beneath you. The man said nothing as his body slumped over, causing his barrier to disappear. With another bullet dead, I turned to watch Funeral Tiger and Kendo's fight finally reach its climax. The floors were cracked and broken while large craters and holes littered the walls all around the room from the non-stop onslaughts of attacks from the 2 strong combatants. Bruised and blooded, Kendo's large grin never wavered as he breathed heavily. Across from him stood a perfectly intact Funeral Tiger. Its green eyes narrowed sharply at its enemy. Despite Kendo's relatively strong combat-based quirk, which granted him the ability to rotate his shoulders at extreme speeds to attack his targets with a near-endless barrage of bullet punches, he ended up being no match for Funeral Tiger. Funeral Tiger was an incredibly strong Shikigami, being the second to last one of the 10 shadows, just behind the Divine General himself. Funeral Tiger's abilities were relatively minimal but incredibly impressive. Its large and powerful body already gave it the edge versus your run-of-the-mill fighters. Add on its expert level of close-quarters combat that involved quick, powerful strikes and slices from its claws, Funeral Tiger made for an opponent one could not get close to without a plan. To finish things off, similar to Maharag, Funeral Tiger had a passive ability to learn and adapt to its opponent's fighting style, making it so that the longer you fought it, the easier it would be to predict your moves and attacks. It was a damn shame it never got shown off in the JJK canon because it ended up being one of the most badass-looking and dangerous Shikigami on the 10 Shadows roster. Falling to his knees with both of his arms hanging uselessly beside him, Kendo looked up at Funeral Tiger and me with a satisfied expression. That's it. I'm spent. I've only lost to one other man. Safe to say, this fight takes the cake. Kendo turned to me before exposing his neck. You've earned your kill. Go for it. In a flash, Funeral Tiger swiped its massive right claws through Kendo's neck, removing the man's head from his shoulders in a splatter of blood. Plus 35 SP, with its job done, Funeral Tiger sank away into my shadow, leaving me alone with 2 more dead bullets. Without giving the corpses another glance, I continued onward through the compound. General POV. Well, what do we have here? Kaina muttered as she watched several vehicles enter the surrounding veil. Sauta had told her that the veil would help conceal the chaos from within, but it wouldn't stop anyone from getting inside because he didn't have the time to set up warding curtains. That meant anyone was capable of walking inside and coming upon their operation. The vehicles all came to a stop outside of the surrounding wall of thick roots. She watched several Yakuza thugs all step out and look up at the massive construct in confusion. One of the men walked up to the wall of roots and raised his hand, summoning a torrent of flames over his palm. Bang! Reloading, Kaina watched as everyone began to scramble around in fear and confusion at the sight of their comrade's head being blown to pieces. Without pause, Kaina began to unload bullet after bullet onto the Yakuza. She felt no hesitation or regret at killing them all. Why would she? If they were part of Overhaul's group, then they all stood by and did nothing as the man tortured and experimented on a helpless child. Bang! 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 With a backflip, Jin avoided a horizontal swipe of a spiked tail one of the Yakuza thugs sent his way. Dashing in, Jin struck a forward kick into the thug's stomach, staggering him. Capitalizing on the opening, Jin spun in place and crashed his foot onto his opponent's temple, knocking him out cold. See, I told you all your training was helping. Twice cloned Sukuna said with a grin as he walked away from a small pile of knocked out or dead thugs. You call that training? It was torture. Jin yelled as they ran down the hall after Himiko. You had me throw down a jacket just to pick it up for hours. How is that good training? It worked, didn't it? Your parrying skills are on another level. No comment. Out of nowhere, the hallway Jin and TC Sukuna were in began to warp and spin, sending Jin to the floor while TC Sukuna barely stayed on his feet. Looks like Irinaka Joy finally found us. TC Sukuna said as he looked around the spinning room. If only I had my CE and techniques, I could have blown this entire hallway away. What do we do then? It's easy. We just have to find the bastard. TC Sukuna grinned as his eyes scanned the length of the hallway. Damn, I guess my advanced perception is missing too. We're in a pinch. What happened to all that confidence? Blam. TC Sukuna and Jin rolled out of the way of 2 large stone pillars that tried to crush them underneath. Jin shot to his feet and sprinted down the hall, only to trip as his surroundings began to twist again. TC Sukuna flipped and weaved away from several more incoming arms as he looked around at his surroundings. I may not be the original, but Twice was at least able to implement my sharp eyesight and senses. Where is he? Where is he? TC Sukuna thought a while back, flipping away from several falling chunks of concrete. I just need to see a glimpse of him. Gah! Jin grunted as he was sent rolling back after Joy was able to finally land a strike on him. Ignoring the pain, Jin rolled to the side to dodge a crashing pillar that shattered the ground below. This isn't good, Sukuna. We need to escape. We can't bring this guy to Mystique or the real me. We have to take him out here and now. TC Sukuna yelled as he ran up the length of an incoming stone arm. Jin sighed and redoubled his efforts despite the pain in his left thigh. All right. Jin yelled before he drew out his twin katanas. Okay then. Maximum effort. Looking around at all the unconscious bodies, TC Sukuna grunted as he swayed back and forth. His vision was unfocused, and his stomach felt as if it was flipping non-stop. He looked over at his remaining enemy, Deidoro. The bullet himself was covered in bruises and blood. It was only thanks to his quirk, Sloshed, that he was still standing. "You're a tricky one. Even with my quirk's entire focus on you, you're still standing." Deidoro yelled from his spot on the ceiling. "Just fall already." "Not today," TC Sukuna said as he fought his dizziness and loss of balance. Dashing toward Deidoro, TC Sukuna sent a punch to the bullet but ended up missing due to his double vision. Deidoro laughed and shuffled back from TC Sukuna's range. Grunting in annoyance, TC Sukuna tripped before rushing Deidoro again. Without all his support, all Deidoro could do was run and evade his attacks. Then again, TC Sukuna knew he couldn't afford to get hit again. His body couldn't afford it. "I just need one opening. Just one," TC Sukuna thought as he struggled to keep up with Deidoro. "This guy. No one has ever managed to last this long. Just what is he?" Deidoro thought as he crawled further back from the pipes he was hanging from. "I just have to send him another blast of my quirk. That will dash." Deidoro jerked as the back of his left foot hit a wall from the dead end of the hallway. In his panicked evasion and inhibition, the bullet failed to notice that he was slowly and carefully being lured into a trap. "Got you." TC Sukuna dashed in front of Deidoro and struck. "Wah!" Deidoro cried out in pain as he was sent crashing down on his left arm, breaking it. Now free of Deidoro's quirk, TC Sukuna ripped out one of the ceiling pipes and closed the distance in a flash. Standing over the bullet, TC Sukuna drove the pointed end of the pipe straight into Deidoro's skull. Panting, TC Sukuna leaned against the wall to catch his breath. Damn, doing this without CE is hard as shit. Bang! TC Sukuna blinked in confusion as he looked down at the bullet hole over his heart. Just as his body began melting away, he looked up at another member of the 8 bullets. In the man's hand was a handgun. "Cheap move, you pussy," TC Sukuna said as his body splattered on the floor. Nemoto Shin huffed in annoyance before looking down at Deidoro's corpse. Down the hall behind Shin in a wheelchair was an old comatose man. This man was the old Yakuza leader of the Shiha Saikai. After giving his old comrade a somber look, Shin walked off to the comatose man and began wheeling him out of the compound. "In here," Himiko panted as she looked down at the nodding rabbit. Grabbing the doorknob, Himiko carefully opened the door and peered into the large dark room. Strewn around on the floor were several toys. Noticing they were in pristine condition, Himiko walked into the room and found the large bed in the middle. There, sitting in its center, was a little girl with pale blue hair that reached the small of her back. Reaching up, Himiko removed her mask so as not to scare Eri. "Chan?" Himiko softly asked as she crouched in front of the bed, causing Eri to flinch. "You're Eri-chan, right?" "Why yes," Eri whispered in a soft, scared voice. Hearing the child speak in such a way made Himiko's heart clench in pain. "Are you here to take me to that room?" "That room? What room?" Himiko asked softly, causing Eri to tremble. The room where they C-cut me." "No, sweetheart." Himiko got on the bed and brought Eri into a soft, warm hug. "I'm not here to do anything like that. No, I'm here to save you. To take you away from here so that they never hurt you ever again." What? Eri whispered in shock as she felt Himiko's soft embrace. Eri's eyes began to tear up as she felt the softness of Himiko's touch. You're here to save me." "MHM. And not just me. All of my friends are here to save you. We're not leaving this place unless you're with us," Himiko said with a wide smile as she picked up the girl. "Hey you, put her back." Himiko and Eri spun to the door to see Kai and Harry standing at the entrance of the door. With a glare, Kai slowly began to remove his right glove. Himiko glared at the two men and quickly placed Eri behind her defensively. Sliding her hand into her thigh holster, Himiko grabbed a small black ball that was glowing with cursed energy. Eri looked down and watched as Himiko snapped the ball in two. "Put Eri back right now," Kai said in a low voice as he began walking toward Himiko with his hand raised. Suddenly, Several muffled explosions began to shake the compound. This caused Kai and Harry to look around in suspicion. Did they plant bombs all over the compound? Harry yelled as everything rumbled around them, causing the ceiling to crack and the walls to shatter. No. Kai hissed before he zeroed in on the direction the noise was coming from. Something is coming. With each new explosion, the explosions grew louder and louder before they were ear-shattering. Himiko grinned and brought A down before covering her with her body. Crack! Shimizu Sautapui, shooting out of the concrete wall. I quickly took in my surroundings and found Himiko holding Eri protectively. Sitting on the ground beside her was a small shattered ball. The ball itself was something I created with my construction technique. Within the ball was a hollow space I used to store some of my CE. Unfortunately, the stored CE could only last 10 hours before they needed to be refilled. Upon breaking one of them, the stored CE would burst out into a pulse I would be able to sense within a set distance. I had given Jin and Himiko each one of these balls in case either of them got into a life or death situation or if they ran into Overhaul during this mission. Looking to the right, I laid my eyes on Overhaul and Chronastasis. There you are, you germophobic bastard. I yelled as I rushed them both. It's you. Overhaul hissed as he tried to reach down to the floor. Beside him, Chronastasis pulled back his hood to reveal his hair. Just before they could launch their attacks, I raised my hand up and shot off several hundred small compact balls of fire with incredible speed, to the point they resembled bullets. Acting quickly, both Overhaul and Chronastasis jumped back behind the doorframe as my fire bullets collided through the walls. Plus 15 SP. Plus 15 SP. Go. Get A out of here. I told Himiko as I pointed to the large hole I had created with my explosive entrance. Not needing to be told twice, Himiko nodded and lifted Eri into her arms. Eri looked at me in wonder before she was whisked away. Plus 25 SP. Moving on instinct, I leaped back as several spikes shot out from the floor in an attempt to skewer me. Not stopping there, the hole-riddled wall in front of me rippled, and dozens of large concrete pillars launched toward me. Swiping my hands in front of me, I instantly created a thick shield made of wood and roots from below. A loud explosion of dust, wood, and stone flew in front of me as my defense took on Overhaul's attack. I can't lose sight of them, I muttered and leaped out of the large hole Himiko left a few seconds ago. As I turned the corner, I skidded to a stop just as Chronastasis was about to rush past me. He slammed his feet into the ground, halting his momentum to avoid getting any closer. But I was already charging forward with my right arm raised. Wham! My knuckles crashed through his plague mask and shattered it into pieces, sending shards into his skin and slicing his left eye. The man grunted in pain before I vanished from his sight. He was momentarily confused before he looked down to see my body low to the ground. With a wet smack, Chronastasis's head snapped to the right as I landed a powerful manji kick into the side of his head. The man flew across the hallway and crashed into the wall. Off in the back, Overhaul growled, seeing his right-hand man being dispatched so quickly. Sukuna. He muttered with rage. Why are you after Eri? I pulled off my hood and gave him a glare. I'm here to save her. Save her. Overhaul repeated with a stupefied voice. Since when does the demon god of the underworld save people? Have you decided to turn a new leaf and become one of those pathetic heroes? Nah. I'm no hero. Besides, I'm pretty sure real heroes wouldn't slaughter all of your men one by one. Or am I wrong? Hearing that, Overhaul didn't seem fazed by the revelation that his bullets and henchmen were all either dead or not. It matters not if my men are dead or alive. What matters is that I get Eri back. Bring her to me, and I'll let you and all of your partners live to fight another day. You make it sound as if you already won. I popped my neck and looked at him as if he were stupid. Look around you, Overhaul. You've lost. Your compound is in pieces, and all your men are scattered or dead. There's no version of this where you come out on top. The young Yakuza boss looked over at the knocked out or possibly dead Chronastasis with an unfocused look. Closing his eyes, Overhaul took a deep breath before he pulled out a grey gun with a green vial on top from out of his jacket. My eyes widened at the sight of the trigger drug in Overhaul's hand. Throughout my time as Sukuna, I had scarcely run into criminals who used the trigger drug in order to fight me. While the drug may have given them a significant power boost, it still wasn't enough for them to defeat me. However, in the hands of a man with an already super powerful quirk, the trigger drug could bolster his already broken abilities to an unimaginable level. Not willing to risk it, I moved in to stop the man. Unfortunately, he slapped his hand on the wall beside him and sent dozens of spikes towards me. If Chisaki, of all people, takes that drug, who knows what it could do to his quirk? I didn't want to do this, but I can't risk losing Eri. Not when I'm so close to perfecting the vaccine that will rid the world of this filth known as quirks. Overhaul said before stabbing the gun into the side of his neck. With a pull of the trigger, he injected himself with the drug. I won't be stopped. I won't stop before I rid this entire world of quirks. I raised my arms in front of me and pumped as much CE to reinforce my body as I could. In a flash, everything around me shattered and exploded. General Pio. Pillars of jagged concrete ripped through the twisting and warping hallway in an attempt to crush both Jin and twice-cloned Sukuna. Despite the roiling environment, the two were somehow able to run away from the incoming pillars. Show yourself, you damn coward. We just want to say hello. Jin yelled. With incredible intensity, TC Sukuna's eyes scanned the ceiling, walls, and floors. His focused expression remained as he flipped over two rising boulders that jutted out in his path. As he spun in the air, TC Sukuna noticed a small, almost unnoticeable crack in the ceiling. There. TC Sukuna thought as he landed on the warping ground. Flexing his muscles, the clone used the warping environment to his advantage to quickly close the distance between himself and Irinaka Joy. Shit. He found me. Joy yelled as TC Sukuna was now only a few centimeters away. Crack. Everything around TC Sukuna, Jin, and Joy violently shook without warning, knocking the bullet out of the shattering ceiling and sending TC Sukuna and Jin onto the floor. Jin tried to push himself up when he noticed an incoming wave of spikes erecting from the walls, ceiling, and floor toward them in the now motionless hallway. Being the closest to the incoming wave of death, Joy's body was skewered from head to toe. The man wasn't even capable of screaming out in pain as a concrete spike shot out of his mouth. Jin. Turning his head, Jin watched as TC Sukuna dashed toward him. In an instant, the spikes reached Jin's position. With his large body crashing and shattering the walls around him, Katsuke Rikia continued running toward Overhaul's location. Rikia is a large, tall, and very muscular man. He wears a black tank top with a standby symbol in the middle. A pair of blue socks and orange sneakers adorned his feet as massive gauntlets and knuckle dusters rested over his fists. Finally, like the rest of his fellow bullets, a black plague mask sat over his face. "I'm coming, boss." Rikia yelled as he smashed through an entire wall. With a tackle, the large man exploded out of two more concrete walls to arrive at a long hallway. Turning his head, Rikia saw his boss and Sukuna down the hall. Before he could rush toward his leader, Rikia saw Overhaul inject himself with the trigger drug. "This can't be good," Rikia said as everything around him exploded. Rah! Roaring in pain, Rikia was stabbed with several sharp spikes that erupted from all around him. "Ah! Katsu came." Rikia heard Overhaul say through the chaos and bellowing destruction. "I need your strength as well. Thank you for your sacrifice." Before he could question what he meant, Rikia looked down as a large, flesh-like arm stabbed through his chest. From within, Rikia felt hundreds of tendrils shoot through his body, sending unimaginable pain through him. As he released a silent scream, Rikia's consciousness vanished as his body was broken down. Throughout the battered and ruined Shai Hasaikai compound, several flesh-like tendrils with hands on the ends slithered throughout the building. It resembles an expanding bloodstream or root system below a large tree. Quickly, the hand tendrils found the corpses of Kendo, Hekiji, Deidoro, and Joy. Instantly, their bodies were broken down and absorbed into the tendrils. With their jobs done, the flesh tendrils returned to their main body. Kai's body. "Must go faster. Must go faster." Himiko screamed as she looked back at the incoming wave of spikes. Reaching the top of the stairs, she finally found a window leading outside. Without pause, Himiko covered Eri's head and leaped out of the glass, shattering the window. Bracing herself, Himiko fell down 2 stories with a roll just as spikes exploded out of the hallway she was once in. Wincing in pain, she quickly looked over at Eri. Seeing that the girl was safe, Himiko ran again despite her aching ankle. Wait. We can't leave him. He'll die. Eri said with fear on her face as she watched the building that once trapped her explode into hundreds of pieces with giant jutting spikes rising high into the sky. Don't worry. Sukuna-kun is strong. He won't die here. He can't. Himiko yelled as she ran toward the single hidden exit point on the surrounding wooden wall around the compound. Squeezing through it, Himiko left the compound's premises and began running down the empty streets. Raising her arm, she waved it around wildly, sending a message to their overwatch. Kablum! Hearing Eri gasp loudly, Himiko turned around and saw a giant monstrosity with several arms standing on 2 thick legs explode out of the compound. Jutting out of its back and arms were long, jagged bone spikes. On its thick neck was a massive bird-like head filled with razor-sharp teeth. However, inside the mouth was a shirtless, 6-armed man with brown hair. His red and black skin seemed to pulse with barely restrained power. It's him. Eri muttered in pure terror as Himiko stepped back in shock at the enormous 15-meter-tall Kiju standing over the compound. Is that Overhaul? Off in her sniper's nest, Kaina blinked in bewilderment as a giant monster exploded out from the compound alongside several large spikes. What is that? Refocusing her attention, Kaina noticed Himiko waving at her from outside the wooden perimeter. Zooming in, she saw that the blonde now had their objective in her arms. Smiling, Kaina leveled her scope around Himiko as she ran off with the child. Seeing no sign of Jin, Kaina frowned and assumed the worst despite herself. Sauta-san, Bubaigawara-san. You two better be alright, Kaina whispered as she watched over Himiko and Eri. Shaking his head, Jin blinked blearily as he awoke from his sleep. Looking around, he noticed he was hanging from one of his measuring tapes. The tape itself was tied to one of his katanas, and the sword itself was stabbed deep into one of the spikes that was jutting out of the ceiling. Sauta. Jin muttered as he remembered what the TC Sukuna did to save him. Moving quickly, TC Sukuna grabbed Jin and pulled out his katana. Before he could ask what was going on, Jin was thrown over TC Sukuna's shoulder. From there, the clone moved in and out of the way of the onslaught of spikes with precision and skill. Despite his fast speed, they were both still sliced and stabbed by the passing spears of death, with TC Sukuna taking the brunt of it, causing his body to begin melting. Feeling his death come close, TC Sukuna made one last-ditch effort and pulled one of Jin's measuring tapes to tie to the katana's grip. With a roar, he stabbed it into one of the unmoving spikes just as he was stabbed through the chest. Due to the suddenness of the move, Jin's head and arm were knocked against a low-hanging pillar of stone from their earlier battle with Joy, knocking him out cold. Back in the present, Jin ignored his injuries and released his measuring tape, causing him to fall down onto the ground in a heap. Luckily, there was a wide enough gap of space where he landed, saving him from being skewered by the spikes lining the floor. Did Overhaul do this? Jin muttered as he tried to stand, only to stop when he felt pain burst out of his thigh and left arm. Looking down, he saw the tip of a thin stone spike stabbing through him. Turning to his arm, Jin's eyes grew wide in horror and then unimaginable relief when he saw he had a broken arm. I'm real. I'm not disappearing. I'm the real one. Jin yelled in happiness as he grasped his broken bone. Shaking his head, Jin stood to his feet and began limping through the hallway of spikes towards the loud sounds of battle in the distance. Hold on, Sauta. I'm coming. Shimizu Sauta-pu. With a grunt, I threw the large boulder off me and stood to my feet slowly. I was covered in cuts and blood as my black hari was ruined and tattered. Throwing it off, I looked up at the massive form of Overhaul's new monstrous body. Crap baskets. Crack. Using C-enhanced speed, I jumped to the side as one of Overhaul's large 6 arms punched the ground I once stood on, shattering the floor and sending rubble everywhere. Such power, one punch from that, and I'm a goner. What have you done, Overhaul? I roared, once again dodging a wild punch thrown by the Yakuza head. Plus 10 SP, I've done my research on you, Sukuna. Overhaul bellowed from his position in his Kiju body's mouth. I know that you're not an opponent to take lightly. Your work on taking out Kobashigawa's entire regime is proof of that. There's even a rumor going around that you have more than one quirk. That's why I won't underestimate you. No, I'll use everything in my power to kill you right here. After I'm done with you, I'll find and take Eri back. Over my dead body. That's the plan. Overhaul said as he stomped toward me. I swung my arm up and sent several sharp roots up into Overhaul's stomach, sending blood splattering all over the floor. Not stopping there, I leaped up into the air and summoned 2 small volcano heads below the Kiju's position. With a flick of my wrist, 2 burning beams of lava shot up and knocked back Overhaul, burning and melting his already injured body. Plus 5 SP, stumbling forward on ruined and mangled limbs, Overhaul roared as he further destroyed his ruined body parts with his quirk. After a split second, he immediately fixed all the damage I'd done. Sukyuna. Overhaul roared as his 6 large arms all swung at me wildly. I'll make you pay for everything you've done. New. Jumping on my Shikigami's back, I flew out of his range of attack. In an instant, a thin flesh tendril with a clock end on its tip shot out toward me and stabbed into New's wing. I watched in shock as New's movement slowed down to the point as if it were in slow motion. With no speed or momentum, we began to fall back into the ground. You can see New. I yelled as I brought New back into my shadows. You can actually see my Shikigami. But how? He shouldn't be able to. In order to slow my descent, I shot out a wave of fire at the ground. Just as I was about to land, the ground below shifted, and a massive concrete fist shot out from beneath me. I was only able to lift my arms defensively before I was bashed away. Pain shot up my back as my body collided with one of the compound's remaining walls. With a grunt, I pushed myself up and watched my blood drip onto the ground. Round D- just as I was about to summon Round Deer in order to heal myself, my surroundings shifted and moved to create 2 massive walls at my sides. Within a second, they rushed toward me in an attempt to crush me. Gritting my teeth, I used projection sorcery to evade the incoming attack. Jumping out of their path, I heard a loud crack explode behind me as the 2 walls collided. Without pause, I sent a wave of fire at several arrow-shaped tendrils that tried to stab into me. His not giving me a moment to breathe. At the sound of a roar, I turned to see Overhaul's large body stomping over to me. Raising all 6 of his arms, he slammed them down onto the ground. The floor all around him cracked and shattered as a wave of destruction sped toward me. Glaring at the incoming attack, I leaped up and summoned a long-flowing root from the ground to catch me. Using the root, I had it move me away from the exploding shards of concrete. What is this? I felt my equilibrium inexplicably go out of whack, resulting in me slipping off my flowing root. Crashing onto the floor, I felt pain and vertigo overwhelming my body and senses. Lifting my head, I saw one of Overhaul's many arms pointing at me. This is Deidoro's quirk, I muttered and pushed past the effects of sloshed. But how does he have that quirk? Deidoro wasn't anywhere near us. If Overhaul has Deidoro's quirk, then could he also have the other bullets abilities as well? But when did he fuse with them? Overhaul grinned down at me, but his head snapped to the side as his actual lower jaw exploded by a speeding pink and indigo bullet. With his focus thrown off, I felt the effects of sloshed disappear. Looking over to where Kaina was, I gave the woman a massive grin. I owe you one. Running out of Overhaul's line of sight, I brought my hands up and held my right hand to my side. Fire burst alive all around me as the broken and shattered remains of the compound gathered together into the sky above in a beautiful, fiery sphere. Maximum output. I leaped up into the sky, causing the burning ball of flames to burst with power. Overhaul fixed his face and turned to me with rage in his crazed eyes. Maximum meteor. With a swing, I launched the meteor straight at Overhaul with a grin. Despite not having enough time to make the attack as big as I wanted, I knew it would be enough to land some considerable damage, if not kill the man. Plus 25 SP, Overhaul was surprised at the sight of the large burning meteor, but he quickly roared and raised his arms to deploy a giant barrier around him. Unfortunately for him, his barrier stood no chance and shattered once my attack struck it. Unwilling to give up there, Overhaul held all 6 hands out and grabbed hold of the meteor. With a ground-shaking roar, He began to slowly push the meteor back. Rah! Overhaul yelled as his Kiju body began to burn and disintegrate from the intense heat. Before I could launch my next attack, I saw several cracks appear over the meteor's surface. In a flash of fire, the meteor broke apart as Overhaul used his quirk to shatter it to pieces. Leaning forward, Overhaul broke down his burnt arms and quickly repaired them. From behind him, several bullets began to rain over his back from Kaisen's sniper. Turning his large head in her direction, Overhaul created several considerable golden barriers around his back to defend himself from the bullets. Due to his new defense, the bullets ended up changing course to different parts of his vast body. Growling in irritation, Overhaul grabbed a large chunk of concrete the size of a small house and hurled it toward Kaisen's sniper nest. No! Using disaster flames, I launched a concentrated spear of fire that knocked the chunk of concrete slightly off course, causing it to collide with the middle of the building Kaisen was on top of. With a loud explosion, the building began to crack and break as it leaned on its side. Squinting, I saw Kaisen use jello to slow her fall from a falling rooftop. Plus 20 SP, you damn brat. Overhaul spun to me and stomped one of his thick feet onto the ground. Using his quirk, Overhaul sent dozens of massive spikes that tried to skewer me. I don't have time for this. With C-enhanced speed, I managed to evade the majority of the incoming spikes, but one of them managed to snag me on my side. This isn't working. Nothing I'm doing is having any effect. If I don't stop him soon, I'll run out of CE. He may be able to fix any of the damage I do to him, but how about if I freeze him into a block of ice instead? Switch, I said as I exchanged disaster plants for ice formation. This better work. Seeing as how I wasn't reduced into a blooded mess from his attack, Overhaul growled and stomped towards me with his 6 large arms ready to smash me to paste. Raising both of my palms in front of my mouth, I blew out a large gust of ice. Maximum output, Ice Age Prison. The air around us became unbelievably cold, resulting in the floor beneath us frosting over. From all around Overhaul's large Kiju body, enormous chunks of ice came into existence and quickly expanded all over his body. Plus 30 SP, growling, he continued to fight his way towards me despite his growing ice prison. Finally, the large building-sized ice formation enveloped all of Overhaul's Kiju body, leaving him frozen in place just in time as his right hand was only a few meters away from my position. Plus 50 SP, finally. I was worried I was going to have to summon Mahoraga for a second there. Falling to a knee, I felt my low reserves of CE catch up with me. As low as they were, I was unable to summon round deer to heal myself. I looked down at my stomach, where the tip of a concrete spear was stabbing through me. Reaching over at the flowing blood from my wound, I grimaced while I debated whether to take it out or not. Sauter. A blooded and injured Jin limped out from around a large chunk of rubble. He then roared out in a panicked voice. Move! Without hesitation, I forced my body to move, but it was too late. A muscled arm shot out from a small crack in the ice formation that encased Overhaul's Kiju arm right in front of me. The arm bulged and swelled before it stretched out toward me. In a flash, the arm's hand grabbed onto my right wrist. Die! Overhaul said with a large grin from within the ice. My eyes grew wide as I felt something very wrong begin to spread from my wrist up my arm. Gritting my teeth, I coated my left hand with CE and sliced off my arm from the bicep down. Leaping back, I watched as my bisected arm exploded from within Overhaul's hand. Plus 15 SP. Crap. That was close. Sliding to a stop, I looked over at my bleeding stump of an arm and winced. Using my binding vow, I switched out disaster flames for blood manipulation in order to stop the blood. Down to 2 techniques. Breaking out of his ice prison, a much smaller Overhaul landed on the ground with a crack. Standing at a height of 396 centimeters, Overhaul's once lanky body was lined with large, powerful muscles. Much like his Kiju form, he now had reddish-black skin with 3 arms on each side of his torso. Over his shoulders and his back were several large pairs of eyes that stared at me with rage. Jutting out of his elbows, knees, and back were large, sharp bone spikes. You sacrificed your own arm for your survival, Overhaul said through his moving plague mask. As he spoke, it sounded as if several different people were speaking at once. You're only prolonging your inevitable death. I remained silent as I glared at him. This is far from enough to stop me, you child-abusing piece of shit. Plus 5 SP. What I did to Eri was all in the name of progress. Overhaul lifted his arms up with an excited expression. Once I rid this world of the disease known as quirks, we can all return to how things once were. You're a madman. I spat out, feeling lightheaded. I'm going to kill you for everything you've done to Eri. I'll make you suffer 100-fold. Please, Overhaul scoffed. I can see that you're barely able to stand on your feet. He noticed. By the way. I could practically feel the grin on Overhaul's face as his many eyes looked over to a worried and injured Jin. The man was leaning heavily against a chunk of rock as the tip of a spike stuck out of his thigh. I think I should return the favor from when you took out my subordinates. Don't you think? Sauter. Kneeling down, Overhaul placed one of his hands on the ground. Bombarding out of the floor, several large spikes sprang toward the masked man. Shit. Crap. Shit. Throwing all of my remaining CE into projection sorcery, I glitched towards Jin. Each new appearance of mine accelerated my speed even further. Be faster. Save him. No matter what. Using my remaining arm, I all but launched Jin across the ruins of the compound. SHNK. And no, Jin muttered as he pushed himself up. Tears pooled around his eyes. No. Grinning, I gave my friend a weak thumbs up. Below me, several sharp spikes penetrated throughout my body. Locations such as the side of my neck, my left shoulder, my chest, and my left knee were all stabbed with a thick concrete spike. Against my will, I felt my eyelids force themselves closed over my eyes as my body began to grow cold. From around my shoulders, Zyko groaned and wrapped itself tightly around me as if to comfort me. Run, Jin. Get out of here. Plus 999 SP. General P. Tired and covered in sweat, Himiko paused in her run, the sudden feeling of dread spreading over her chest. Holding Eri closer to herself, Himiko turned around and heard a faint yell behind her that sounded like Jin. Hearing the far-off yell as well, Eri whimpered and buried her head into Himiko's neck. This is all my fault, Eri whispered. Sukuna-kun. Himiko uttered, her gaze focused on the disappearing veil in the distance. General POV. Kai watched as Jin held his head in his hands. The masked man was crying hysterically as he rocked himself back and forth on the ground. At the sight of the pathetic man, Kai disregarded Jin as a threat. Sauter. No, you can't. Is this my fault? Sauter. All my fault. Standing still, Kai carefully eyed Sauter's still body. Crimson streamed freely down the spikes that were embedded into his body, flowing into the large puddle below him. Ripples pulsed out with every new drop of blood that fell. Satisfied that the so-called King of Curses was dead, Kai turned to the direction he had last seen Himiko and Eri run off to. Bending his knees, the head of the Shai Hasaikai leaped into the air and landed on a far-off rooftop. With incredible ease, he began sprinting and jumping from rooftop to rooftop toward the key to his future. You're not going anywhere, Eri. Thanks, Jello, Kaina muttered as she rolled off the jellyfish Shikigami. With a grunt, she looked around the huge pile of rubble behind her from where the building collapsed. Scanning over at the nearby buildings, Kaina turned around and pointed at a nearby rooftop that overlooked the ruined compound. Jello, can you fly me up there? I need to dash. Kaina's eyes grew wide in confusion as she watched the jellyfish Shikigami slowly begin to disappear. Jello. The Shikigami released a low moan as it finally disappeared. Wait, don't tell me. Kaina gasped and began sprinting toward the compound, her expression tight and panicked. How could someone destroy my Shikigami? Sauter said as he placed some more barbecue into his mouth. Well, the only way that could happen is to exorcise them with CE. But considering I'm the only one with that power, that's not really a concern. Another way would be if I'm either knocked out or killed. That could force them to be dispelled for a short amount of time. Even then, I'm not too sure if they would disappear. Well, except for Jello. It seems to run off my CE like a leech. So if I do get taken out, Jello would probably disappear. But I doubt anybody besides a scant few could do the job. Glaring ahead, Kaina quickened her pace as she jumped over a fallen piece of rubble. With practiced ease, she parkoured over and around the scattered piles of spikes and chunks of concrete around the compound. Hearing hushed sobs, Kaina quickened her pace and turned the corner. "It can't be," Kaina muttered as she slowed to a stop. Her eyes trained on the still, skewered body of the young man she had grown to respect deeply. Underneath him was a large puddle of blood. Sauta-san. Looking to her right, she noticed Jin wallowing away while muttering incomprehensibly to himself. Despite her few short weeks living together with Sauta, Jin, and the incredibly touchy Himiko, Kaina had sincerely enjoyed her time with the three oddballs. Living with them had made her almost forget her bloody past. Every day during their daily meals together, Kaina had wondered if this was what it would be like if she pursued a different path in her life. A path where she surrounded herself with close friends or family. A path devoid of bloodshed and murder. It was lovely. And now it was gone. Even if she and everyone else managed to escape alive, the glue that held Himiko and Jin together was now dead and gone. Things wouldn't be the same again. Stepping up to Sauta's body, Kaina hesitated but ultimately closed his half-lidded eyes. Reaching out to Zaiko, she picked up the worm and placed it around her own shoulders. Taking a deep breath, she walked away from Sauta and approached Jin. "Bubaigawara-san," Kaina said in a cold, detached voice. A voice she had grown used to hearing during her time in the HPSC. Walking over to the man, she reached down and grabbed his shoulder. "Get up. We still have a mission to complete." "I can't," Jin muttered, his hands over his head. "Sauta is. He's dead. Kaina-chan. He's dead." "I know," Kaina whispered. Kneeling beside him, she grabbed his face and lifted his head so he could look at her. "But we still need to save Eri-chan. Remember? It's what Sauta-san would want. We have to help that little girl. Do you understand?" Sniffing, Jin closed his eyes and collected himself. After a few seconds, he ignored all his injuries and forced himself to stand up. Brushing his arm over his eyes, Jin wiped the tears off his face. "Why, you're right. Let's go save Eri-chan." Nodding, Kaina bandaged Jin's thigh and placed his arm in a sling before they began running off toward where she had last seen Himiko heading. As she ran, Kaina turned back to look at Sauta's unmoving form. "Goodbye." With no one left around, no one was there to notice the ripples on the blood puddle's surface quicken until they came to a complete stop below Sauta's body. Inexplicably, the ripples began to invert. Several blocks away, dozens of people were walking toward their evacuation zone, guided by police officers wearing bored expressions. "Ha, what a pain," one of the traveling civilians said with a groan as she wiped some sweat off her neck. Beside her, another young woman nodded. "Shouldn't they have warned us ahead of time we were supposed to have an evacuation drill?" "I know, right? Like, shouldn't they be more considerate or something?" The brown-haired young woman said with an eye roll. "Keep it moving, everyone." An officer with sharp teeth and green eyes said as he directed the large marching crowd forward. "Remember, act as if this was the real deal." Standing next to a bookstore at a nearby intersection, Detective Yoichi and one of his subordinates stood beside one another, watching the annoyed crowds walking down the street. "Hey, Detective Ige, I don't mean to question you or anything, but why are we doing this?" A young man with slicked-back black hair said. "I told you already, Kurahara-kun." Yoichi took a drag of his cigarette and then blew out a puff of smoke. "This was simply a precaution. We got a call about a bomb threat. But from the sound of the caller's voice, that call was clearly a joke. If it was clearly a joke, is evacuating 12 city blocks full of people really necessary?" Kurahara said as he motioned at the agitated people and even some police officers. "I can't believe the chief okayed this." "That's because he didn't," Yoichi thought as he looked away. Kabang! Suddenly, a powerful tremor rocked the city all around them, causing all the evacuating people and officers to momentarily lose their balance. Off in the distance, smoke and chunks of concrete flew up into the sky. As the structures fell, several more tremors shook the city, causing waves of panicked screams from the civilians. What was that? Holy shit! Was that an actual bomb? I thought this was a drill." Where are the heroes? Detective Yoichi watched the rising pillars of smoke with wide eyes. Damn it. Sukuna. What the hell is going on over there? Yoichi screamed in his head as he heard several officers begin to call in the situation. There were even some calls being made to bring in some support from heroes. Whatever you're doing, do it fast, Sukuna. Detective. We need to get these people out of here. Right. Let's get moving. It's okay, Eri-chan. Everything's going to be okay. Himiko forced herself to smile as she continued running through the empty city streets. She winced as her swollen ankle sent waves of pain up her leg. Eri looked up at Himiko with worry as she continued looking behind them. Her large red eyes scanned the streets below before moving up to the rooftops. A wave of terror shot through her as she spotted a six-armed creature with a plague mask staring down at her with rage in his eyes. He's here. Eri whispered. Pulling on Himiko's shirt, Eri pointed behind them in a panic. He's here. He's here. Feeling as if a bucket of ice had spilled over her, Himiko stopped running and spun around. Looking up to where Eri was pointing, Himiko found Kai looking down at them. Glaring at him, she forced herself to continue running. He won't get you, Eri-chan. I promise. No, that's enough, Eri muttered. Just let me go, or he'll kill you too. No. No one's dead. Himiko yelled as she ignored her injured ankle. I'll save you. Just watch me. Admirable. Feeling a wave of nausea come over her, Himiko's sense of balance turned upside down, causing her to trip and roll on the ground. With blurry vision, Himiko looked down at Eri and double-checked to see if she was okay. Ie-chan. Himiko said as she tried to stand, but her body and mind continued to sway. It's okay. I'll protect you. The two girls spun around as a loud crash rumbled behind them. Looking back, Himiko and Eri watched as Kai slowly stood to his full height. Eri began to shake as she took in his new, more terrifying form. Hey, Kai muttered coldly. Come here. Stay back, you six-armed piece of shit. Himiko growled out as she stood up despite the overpowering nausea. Reaching behind her, Himiko brought out her blunted weapon as she stood in front of Eri protectively. Where is he? Where's Sukuna-kun? Ah, were you too close? Kai said with amusement in his golden eyes. Sauta tried to stand in my way, so I killed him. Himiko's expression fell into disbelief and despair before she closed her eyes. Shaking her head, her eyes narrowed into slits as she glared with as much hate as she could muster at Kai. No, you're lying. Himiko roared with tears running down her face. He's not dead. You're lying. Sighing in annoyance, Kai dismissed Himiko and began walking over to Eri. Enough of this. It's time to come back, Eri. Unless you want this girl to die as well. I don't want that, Eri said in defeat. She began to walk over to Kai, causing Himiko to look at her in surprise. Chan. Please. Just go. I don't want you to die too. Eri said as she began walking toward Kai. Her small hands gripped the fabric of her long dress. Forget about me. I don't think so. Gasping in exhaustion, Jin marched towards Kai with his expression set into a rage. Himiko, Eri, and Kai turned to watch Jin come to a stop from the other end of the street. You're still here? Kai asked in annoyance. I am. I won't forgive you for what you did. Jin roared as he pointed a finger at Kai. But I promise you this. We will save that little girl. No matter what. You've seen what I can do, Kai said as he motioned to himself. I've defeated the so-called demon god. Tell me, what can you do? Jin huffed angrily and pointed up to the sky. That. Kai, Himiko, and Eri all looked up at the rooftops to see over 50 Kaina clones all aiming down their snipers at Kai with fire behind their eyes. And this. Jin yelled as a large wave of black liquid exploded behind him. Rising out of the goo, dozens upon dozens of Jin clones sprang to life. Their eyes were set into a frenzy as they glowered at Kai. Sad man's parade. Before Kai could react, the sky rained down a volley of death. General POV, Bubaigawara Jin's quirk was called Double. It was a quirk that allowed Jin to create an exact duplicate of anything, living or not. To duplicate something, he first needs to know its precise measurements and characteristics. When they receive enough damage, the clones Jin creates will disappear. However, instead of disappearing into nothing, they decayed into a mud-like substance. The duplicates created were less durable than the original, and the second duplicate was even less durable than the first. This continues with each new copy made by a copy. When Jin creates a duplicate of a person, he personally has no control over the clones because they have their own autonomy, personalities, and abilities that are utterly identical to the original. Take this. My ultimate attack. Jin yelled as he pointed a finger at Kai. Sad man's parade. Up on the rooftops, the small legion of Kaina clones all lifted their rifles and fired their weapons at the momentarily stunned head of the Yakuza. Bullets rained down on Kai, with dozens of loud cracks filling the sky. What is this? Is this your quirk? Kai yelled as he raised a golden barrier over him to defend himself from the hail of bullets. Due to the constant onslaught of powerful gunfire, the barrier over Kai began to crack fast until it shattered. Dashing to the side, Kai evaded the wave of bullets, but a few shots struck true. Grunting in pain, Kai quickly broke down and repaired his tattered arms, sending a wave of excruciating pain through him, as his quirk always did whenever he used it on himself. Damn pests. Kai spat out. You're the pest. A small army of Jin clones dashed toward Kai with anger in their eyes. Yeah. We're gonna kick your ass until there's nothing left. Another clone roared as he drew out his katanas. Several yells of agreement rumbled through the crowd of clones. I'm going to shove my sword up your ass. Let's give him the people's elbow. Spit in his cereal. Running at high speeds, several clones leaped at Kai and swung down their respective weapons. Glaring at the large number of clones, Kai swiped 3 arms at the nearest group. As his fingers brushed past the clones' bodies, Kai activated his quirk, forcing them to explode violently. Looking down, Kai growled in annoyance as a mud-like substance poured over the ground from where he killed the 7 clones. They're not made of flesh and blood, Kai thought. Those barriers of his are tricky. A Kaina clone said as she tore off a strand of her hair to turn it into a long bullet. Loading it into her arm, she raised her sniper and adjusted her aim. Even so, I'll make you pay for what you did, you piece of shit. Bang. 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 Moving back to dodge another wave of bullets, the young head was given no time to collect himself as he was either assaulted by a hail of bullets or a swarm of Jin clones. Down the street, away from the battle, Himiko seized the opportunity and snatched up the surprised Eri from the ground despite her mental turmoil. It's time to go, Eri-chan. What about them? Eri asked as Himiko limped away from the battle. They'll be okay. We just have to dash. I don't think so. Kai yelled as he pressed his hands onto the ground. Within seconds, an expanding wave of huge spikes erupted from the ground, skewering several incoming waves of Jin clones and destroying the surrounding buildings into pieces. The Kaina clones above tried to move back before they toppled down with their respective perches, but only half of them were successful in retreating into safety. Shit. The original Kaina muttered as she ran behind the alleyways, catching glimpses of the destruction Kai caused with a single move. Behind her, the original Jin did his best to keep up despite his injured thigh. This bastard is strong. He was a lot stronger before, Jin said between huffs. Sauter was able to force him into the form he's in now. I don't think we'd stand a chance against that monster form of his. Hold on. Can he still turn into that? Let's hope not. Kaina and Jin turned the corner and continued running. But taking down Overhaul isn't our objective. It's getting Eri-chan out of here. Exiting the alley, Kaina looked around and spotted Himiko and Eri struggling to get away across the street. Himiko-chan. Over here. Hurry. Kaina yelled as she looked down the street, where hundreds of Jin clones rushed Kai despite being obliterated. Up above, the remaining Kaina clones fired off rapid-fire shots at the 6-armed man. We need to use this distraction while it lasts. At this rate, it won't be long before he runs out of clones to kill. Kaina Onichan, Jin-kun. Himiko smiled as she dashed toward her two friends from behind the car they were using as cover. "We're using our backup escape route," Kaina told Himiko as she and Eri reached them. Holding her arms out, Himiko handed Eri to Kaina. "Move fast and stay low. Let's go." "Right." Feeling a far-off explosion rumble through the streets, the four began moving once again. As they traveled through the streets using the chaos as cover, Himiko approached Jin with an anxious expression. "Jin-kun," Himiko said in a small voice, causing Jin to look away. "Is it true? Is Sukuna-kun?" "It's true," Jin muttered. "Sauta is. He's gone. Toga-chan. He died, saving my life. It's all my fault. I'm so sorry." Himiko's expression became crestfallen as she fought back a sob. "It's not your fault, Jin-kun. It's not anyone's fault but Overhaul's. I swear, I'll kill him one day. I'll gut him. I'll make him pay for what he did. Pick up the pace, you two. We don't have a lot of time. Crack." A large wall made of concrete and asphalt rose in front of the four, causing Eri's eyes to widen in terror as she realized they'd been found. Kaina cursed as she turned back to watch Kai walking over to them, his body covered in sliding mud. But what caught her attention was his burning golden eyes piercing at her. "No, he's not looking at me," Kaina muttered as Himiko and Jin stood in front of both her and Eri. "That bastard will stop at nothing to get Eri-chan back." Shimizu Sauta POV. Turn a negative into a positive. Multiply negative cursed energy by itself. Combine them. Smash them together. There it is. The core. Grab it. Hold on to it. Make it yours. Finally. The reverse cursed technique. Blinking, my surroundings slowly came into focus. I looked down and saw several concrete spikes stabbing deeply into my body. Using my only remaining arm, I pushed myself free and stumbled back. Due to the blood loss, my knees gave out from under me. I looked down at the bleeding holes within my body and transformed my remaining curse energy into positive energy. Slowly, I began to heal myself with RCT, just to the point where I wouldn't die. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough left over to heal my arm back. As my body healed and my blood recovered, I reached up and ripped off my blooded white kimono top and tight black shirt, leaving me shirtless. When I was sufficiently healed, I stood up on wobbly legs and stared at my newly healed but still blooded body. Despite feeling the effects of CE exhaustion, I couldn't help but feel extraordinary. "How wonderful," I muttered with a smile. "My mind feels so clear." Looking up, I enjoyed the feeling of the wind on my face. Was this what Gojo felt? Once I felt my lightheadedness disappear, I finally noticed the floating screen in front of me, and a crazy grin stretched across my face at what I read. "Congratulations on receiving over 900 SP in one go. You have unlocked a limited time event. Any of your draws will now have an added 45% chance of winning one of your chosen tier's highest level prizes. Time remaining on event, 55 seconds. Nothing says Gacha like a limited time event." Snapping my fingers, I summoned my Gacha system and checked my current points. Total SP, 7,491, use 3,500 SP. I spun the dial and waited. With a satisfying click, the Gacha machine's lid flipped open to reveal a glowing prize ball. Lifting it tenderly, I snapped open the lid and grinned. "You have pulled Okotsu Yuta's curse energy reserves. Rank, Platinum." Without wasting another second, I immediately equipped Yuta's reserves of cursed energy, restoring all of my lost energy and fueling myself with the second largest reserves of CE from all of JJK. With so much CE at my disposal, I felt an incredible boost of power fill me, further boosting my current high. If I were to compare Tsukumo Yuki's CE reserves with Okotsu Yuta's, it would be like comparing a kiddie pool with a large pond. "This is amazing. This won't do," I muttered, raising my right bisected arm. Immediately, a burst of steam rose out of my bicep as bone, flesh, blood, and skin grew. Flexing my new right arm, I grinned widely with euphoria. "Better. Haha. Again. Use 3,500 SP. You have pulled Ryman Sukuna's cursed technique, Shrine. Rank: Platinum. At the sight of one of my most highly sought-after techniques after I first received my gacha system, I began to chuckle. That chuckle soon turned to a small giggle before becoming full-blown laughter. The heavens must be smiling upon me today. I yelled as I held my arms up and danced over my own spilled blood, splashing and spreading the crimson liquid around me while my tattoos burned to life. Now then, time for round 2. Turning my head, I listened and watched the chaos and destruction in the distance shake the surrounding area. With a grin, I brushed back my hair and stared up at the smoke-filled blue sky. Switch. General Piri, enough of these petty tricks. Kai roared as he slammed all his hands on the ground. I'll just rip you all to shreds. I'll fix Eri once you're all dead. Incoming. Jin yelled in panic as a wave of spikes rushed them. Running forward, Jin sent out a massive group of clones to try and slow down the wave of death. Unfortunately, the legions of clones were only able to slightly slow down the onslaught of rushing spikes. Kaina Onichan. Take Eri and run. Himiko yelled as she swung her blunted sword onto the wall, using the blade's imbued technique to break a small but large enough hole in the wall behind them. Go. Hurry. We'll slow him down. You're asking me to leave you both to die. Kaina yelled in disbelief as she held Eri tighter to her chest, causing the crying girl to cover her head with her hands. There's no way you two can slow that down. Just stop it. Let me go, and you all won't die. Eri yelled in despair as the wave of spikes finally neared them all. No one's dying today. A cold but calm voice said as a blooded and shirtless figure blurred in between them all and the incoming wave of death. Himiko, Jin, Eri, and Kaina watched in disbelief as a completely healed Sauter swiped his right arm to the side. Dismantle. Dismantle. The incoming wave of spikes instantly crumbled into thousands of tiny cubes as my invisible attack sliced through the air. My attack had also cut through the sides of the buildings around us. Off down the street, Overhaul stood in bewilderment as his golden eyes stared into my own. Plus 65 SP, plus 35 SP, plus 15 SP, plus 45 SP, plus 55 SP. It can't be, you're alive. Yep. Still alive and kicking. I grinned at the six-armed man and waved my newly healed right arm. I even grew myself a new arm. Pretty neat, ain't it? Plus 35 SP, impossible. Overhaul glared at me as he scanned my body. How is this possible? Do you have some healing quirk as well? Nope. It's called the reverse cursed technique. I motioned to my healed body, then pointed at my head with a crazed smile. You should have chopped my head off or broken me down. Now, you're going to lose, Chisaki. Plus 50 SP, I'm going to lose. Chisaki looked offended at my use of his name and began walking toward me. No, I'm going to obliterate you until there's not even a single atom of you left. Behind me, Himiko and Jin looked at me in shock and joy, while Kaina stood in disbelief. Eri, who wasn't familiar with me, just stared at my back with surprise. Around Kaina's shoulders, Zyko looked at me with relieved, derpy eyes. Is that really you, Sukuna-kun? Himiko asked in a small, scared voice. As if afraid, she was currently hallucinating what she was seeing. It can't be, Kaina muttered as Jin rubbed his eyes. I saw your body with my own eyes. You were dead. Sauter? Jin asked. Yup, it's me. Sorry about that little scare back there. I said without turning around, my focus aimed at Chisaki. I swiped my hand behind me and sent a dismantle at the large wall behind the four. My attack swiftly shattered the concrete wall into pieces, leaving them all room to escape unimpeded. Now, you all need to get out of here. I'll handle things from here. Plus 25 SP, plus 55 SP, plus 36 SP, plus 50 SP. You can't, Eri said as she made Kaina place her on the ground. Turning back, I looked at the small, scared girl with a tender smile. I had to struggle to hold my manic grin away so I wouldn't unsettle Eri. He's too strong. You'll die. This is enough. I'll go back to him. I don't want any of you to die. Not for someone like me. The girl's right, Chisaki said as he continued walking towards us. Give her back, and I'll consider showing you all a modicum of merc-slice. Suddenly, the bottom half of Chisaki's body was cut in half. With no lower body support, the head of the Shai Hasaikai fell onto the ground in shock. Blood and organs splashing below him. The man gasped in pain as he looked down at his sliced body. Be quiet. Trash. I ignored Chisaki and walked over to Eri. Kneeling down beside her and Kaina, I placed a comforting hand on Eri's head. It's okay, Eri. I'm not going to die. We all came here to save you, which means we won't stop until you're safe and sound. Now, Big Sis Kaina here is going to take you somewhere safe, okay? But no buts. I smiled and brushed her uncombed hair back with a grin, compelling the girl to look up at me with large, hopeful eyes. Just leave this to your big brother, Sauter. Plus 30 SP, rising up, I looked over to Kaina's expression and saw that she was in a state of disbelief and doubt. Reaching out, I placed a hand on her shoulder, cementing the fact that I was indeed standing in front of her. It's really me. Sorry about the scare back then. But right now isn't really the time for explanations. I turned back to watch as Chisaki finished restoring his lower body. You all need to get out of here. Now. Plus 15 SP, okay. Kaina nodded and placed a hand over my own. I'll hold you to that. We won't. Himiko yelled as tears ran down her face. I won't just leave you here to die. I can't. I can't go through that again. Smiling at the blonde, I walked over to her and hugged her. I'm sorry about scaring you, Himiko. But trust me, I won't lose. I'll never lose again. Turning to Jin, I grinned at him before placing a finger on Himiko's forehead, much to her confusion. Using precise curse energy control, I painlessly knocked her out. Sliding my arms under her slumbering body, I handed her off to Jin, who struggled to carry her over his shoulder despite his broken arm. Don't worry, bro. I got this. Plus 40 SP. Jin stared at my face for several seconds before nodding. Okay. You better win. Then. Otherwise, Toga-chan will bring you back just so she can kill you herself. Don't worry, I know. I nodded as I walked away from the four of them. With nothing more to be said, Kaina picked Eri up, and the four of them began speeding down the street. As they fled, Chisaki and I restarted our little staring contest before I gave the man a grin. Sorry about the hold-up. That was really considerate of you to give my friends and me time to talk. Chisaki glowered at me as he flexed his arms. Consider it a parting gift. Once I'm done with you, I'll find them and kill them all before taking Eri back. Is that so? I rubbed the back of my head and gave him an amused look. Well then, let's get started. Shall we? Dashing toward him, I slammed a fist straight into his stomach with incredible power. Chisaki's eyes bulged out of his head as he flew back through one of the buildings behind him with a loud crack, sending rubble and dust all around him. Whoa! That wasn't even a full-powered strike. Not bad. Is this what one can do with such large reserves of cursed energy? I looked down at my hands and laughed. How incredible! Jumping back, I avoided several pillars of concrete from crushing me. The apartment building beside me shattered into chunks before reconstructing into a massive fist with spikes for knuckles. The first flew through the air and smashed into me, sending me flying through the air. Impressive. With this level of reinforcement, an attack like that is laughable. From below, Chisaki shot out of the roof of a business building using a quickly rising pillar beneath him. Raising one of his arms, he tried to use Deidoro's quirk. Sloshed. On me. Only to watch as his arm flew off him with a clean cut. Gah. Chisaki groaned. Hurts, doesn't it? Plus 25 SP. I grinned and moved to the side as he tried to grab me. Swiping my left arm, I watched as a large cut appeared on his chest, sending blood through the air. With an application of his quirk, Chisaki healed his injuries and combined all three of his right arms into one massive appendage. With a wide swing, he tried to punch me down to the ground with a heavy punch. Spinning in midair, I watched as his large fist flew past me in slow motion. Using a punch of my own, I knocked his large arm away and sent a volley of dismantles all over his body. Blood and flesh flew around Chisaki as he was sliced to shreds. The ground, buildings, cars, and whatever else was below us ended up being torn to shreds as well. Such power, I muttered with a euphoric smile. Plus 10 SP, you bastard. Chisaki roared as he put his body back together just before he slammed into a building, destroying the structure. From below the wreckage, Chisaki made an expression of pure rage as he placed all 4 of his hands on the floor. After landing on the ruined ground, I sent several slashes toward the massive incoming waves of jagged spikes, effectively destroying them in one move. Before I could sprint after him, Chisaki erected a large barrier around me in an effort to trap me. How amusing. I looked around me as the streets and buildings all began to twist and warp like a tornado around me, trapping me within its urban structure. I grinned at the sight as the solid whirlwind erupted spikes from the inside. It was at that moment the barrier that was supposedly keeping me contained disappeared, and the tornado of death shrank, ready to slice me to shreds like a giant blender. Sliding my hands in my pockets, I commanded several hundred dismantle slashes to dance around me in a speeding circle to act as my own impromptu barrier, cutting and slicing all the spikes that spun around me before they ever had a chance of getting near me. Smiling, I swiped both of my arms to the side and watched as the solid concrete tornado split in two. As both halves fell with an earth-shaking crash, I looked out and saw Chisaki staring at me in disbelief. "Why won't you die?" he yelled before using a pillar to launch himself at me. Standing in place, I aimed my left hand at him as my right hand rested over my forearm. Slice. 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 Chisaki and everything behind him were all instantly destroyed into chunks, slabs, and debris as my onslaught of dismantles obliterated everything within half a block. Flying in midair, Chisaki's decapitated head flipped around, and his scattered body parts flew all around him. With a low, monstrous roar, he somehow pulled his entire being back together into one. Sukuna. Chisaki's scream pierced through the sky as his voice reverberated everywhere around us. "What are you?" "Me," I answered with a grin. "I'm your executioner." "Ra!" Chisaki yelled as he forced his body to transform back into the Kiju form from before. However, unlike before, he was much smaller. Seeing this, he stretched several flesh tendrils into the ground and fused the concrete, metal pipes, and whatever else he could grab into himself in the act of desperation, increasing his size and power. Doing this caused Chisaki to roar in pain. "Getting desperate, are we?" I mocked as I leaped over the crumbling city streets. With an ear-splitting crack, Chisaki's disfigured Kiju form dug into the road below and lifted an entire street above his head. With a heave, he launched it at breakneck speeds at me despite the large size of the structure. Just as it was about to slam into me, I pointed a double-finger gun at the side of the structure. Scale of the dragon. Recoil. Twin meteors. I chanted with a small smile. Dismantle. Slash. Kaisen stood in shock as the massive chunk of concrete, asphalt, rock, and dirt was split cleanly in half. The young Yakuza head was unprepared when my attack continued onward and sliced him and everything behind and around him in two. My empowered dismantle continued onward, causing all the buildings within half a city block to split in two, causing the structures to collapse and shatter from the stress. To think this is only around half of what Sukuna was capable of. How frightening. Plus 85 SP. Screaming in pain, Chisaki grabbed his bisected Kiju body and forced himself back together. Falling to his knees, Chisaki panted as his thrown projectile crashed back onto the ground, releasing a loud explosion through the streets and sending shockwaves everywhere. This resulted in the buildings surrounding me still being intact and the windows behind me shattering. It hurts so much. Chisaki groaned as he held his real body from within his Kiju's mouth. I can't keep putting myself back together. My mind will shatter. I told you, didn't I? I said as I landed on the large pile of rubble from the upheaved street. I told you I was going to make you suffer 100-fold for what you did to Eri. I should make good on my promise. Grinning madly at Chisaki, I raised my hands and made the Enma palm sign. Domain expansion. Malevolent shrine. Rising from behind me, a disfigured demonic Buddhist shrine came to life. Several bovine skulls emerged from nothing at the base of the shrine. The hip and gable rooftop quickly grew out, jutting horns, two smaller and closed mouths in each gable, and human skulls that hung down from them. The shrine had 4 entrances, each designed as large, grotesque mouths that featured human-like teeth and tongues. Between the 2 layers of the roof was a smaller mouth filled with sharp teeth. Additionally, at each corner of the shrine stood 4 short, tree-like stumps with gnarled branches. Upon its creation, a wave of darkness and crimson spread out from the shrine, encompassing a 100-meter radius, bathing everything caught within it in a hellish landscape. Malevolent shrine. Unlike other domains, it does not cut out a separate space with a barrier. Manifesting a domain without a barrier was like painting in the air without a canvas. It is a truly divine feat. To top it off, by adding a pact to allow its victims a path of escape. It vastly increases the range of its guaranteed sure hit effect to a maximum of a 200-meter radius. Though out of consideration for the still occupied homes, businesses, and schools in the distance, I restrained the effect to a 100-meter radius limited to the surface. As soon as my domain appeared, thousands upon thousands of non-stop cleaves and dismantles ripped Chisaki and everything caught within the domain's 100-meter radius into pieces, slices, chunks, and ribbons. All up to the point, nothing remained. As I watched the relentless destruction with my hands pressed together, I laughed as Chisaki continued to rebuild himself after being torn to shreds in a repeating cycle of pain and violence. The reason his body had managed to hold out for so long was that I was restricting the output of my domain where he stood, ensuring he would get caught in a non-stop cycle of pain and agony. Plus 50 SP, plus 90 SP, plus 120 SP, plus 145 SP. Look at all those points. Chisaki screamed a silent scream as his mind was all but shattered at this point. It was only due to his body's biological need to survive that he continued to rebuild himself again and again unconsciously. Not bad, Chisaki, I said as I released the hand sign and made several pacts with myself to ensure the effects of my next move were similar to the real Sukuna's. Holding my hands in front of me, I watched with a grin as powerful flames sprang to life all around me, scorching and liquefying my surroundings in their intense heat. This may be overkill, but I don't care. I want to watch it all burn. Holding my hands out, I collected my flames into a large flaming arrow at my side. Due to the effects of my flames, everything within the domain began to heat up and burn to extreme levels, melting and distorting solid steel and rock into liquid. Raising my fire arrow, I aimed at Chisaki's repeatedly rebuilding body, which had been reduced to his normal human state due to all the lost biomass. Open. General POV. What the hell is going on over there? I don't know. Let's hurry. Dashing through the streets, several pro-heroes who had answered the police calls for help dashed as fast as they could down the abandoned city streets. As they all ran, the loud sounds of destruction and explosions resounded out in front of them. The non-stop tremors that rocked the ground below them caused them to struggle to remain on their feet. Hey, what the hell is that? One of the heroes, a woman with sea-green hair that reaches just past her shoulders and a short fringe with splayed ends held down by an orange bandana, said with wide eyes. This was the pro-hero, Fukukado EMI, otherwise known as Ms. Joke. At her remark, all the assembled heroes paused and gazed up at the sky as orange and red light spread across the horizon. Suddenly, the distant ruins of the destroyed city several meters ahead ignited in bright, scalding flames, followed by a massive pillar of fire that shot up into the heavens. Simultaneously, a powerful tremor shook the ground around them as if a mighty earthquake had struck, sending them all sprawling to the ground. Burning streams of fire danced around the pillar of flames as if celebrating its very creation. The pro-heroes could do nothing but watch in frozen terror until the divine pillar slowly faded, leaving behind several columns of dark smoke in its destructive wake. Let's go. Someone might need help. It was only due to her many years as a pro that Ms. Joke was able to break out of her stupor. Despite her shaking legs, she forced herself to run forward. Seeing Ms. Joke move, the rest of the heroes nodded shakily and followed after her. Running as fast as they could, the heroes all quickly reached the source of the flames. MHA. One of the heroes, a man dressed in a yellow and black costume, muttered. W wasn't there, Several buildings right here. No one had the courage to respond as the heroes looked around the expansive, empty area in front of them. There was nothing left within the 100-meter lot of space. Nothing but charred rock and bellowing pillars of smoke. Off in the background, ruined buildings lay in tatters with long cut-like gouges strewn across their surfaces. The level of destruction was on a completely different scale than anyone present had ever seen outside a natural disaster. It wasn't far off to say that the scene before the heroes resembled that of an apocalyptic war zone. "Hold on!" Ms. Joke yelled as she spotted a figure somehow standing in the center of the destruction. "You there? Are you okay?" Standing behind several pillars of smoke, a shirtless figure turned to them with a grin. Due to the distance, the pros weren't able to make out any details other than the white, bloody, baggy martial arts pants and the several black tattoos covering his body. "Hold on, tattoos? Isn't that?" A hero dressed as a firefighter, sporting a long yellow jacket with high visibility lines running down the center along his sleeve cuffs, hem, and high collar, as well as a red fireman hat, said. This was the pro hero, Backdraft. "Is that Sukuna?" At his statement, the far-off figure grinned and turned around. Seeing Sukuna trying to escape, all the pro heroes moved in. "Stop him. Don't let him get away. Hold it right there." As fast as they could, they all reached Sukuna's position. However, when they arrived, they quickly found that no one was there. Looking around in a panic, they all searched for the man they suspected to be responsible for the catastrophic attack. "Find him. Don't let him get away." Backdraft yelled as he searched everywhere, but the pillars of smoke made it hard to see anything within the radius of the destruction. "Come back here, you villain." Off above a rooftop several dozen meters away, Sukuna watched the heroes run around wildly in search of him. With nothing more to do, Sukuna turned around and vanished. General Pui. There's still no concrete explanation for the cause of the widespread destruction that occurred in the Florum ward. Luckily, the local police were conducting a routine evacuation drill that ended up saving thousands of lives. A newscaster dressed in a black suit looked into the camera and stated, "Witnesses to the event have reported seeing and hearing what could be described as a possible bomb explosion or a large-scale battle." However, in contrast to the claims made by the HPSC and the heroes present saying that was indeed the case, several eyewitness accounts suggest that the destruction resulted from a significant battle. Here are some interviews conducted by our on-site team just a few minutes after the incident. The screen changed to two young men with wide, frantic looks. Behind them were several rising pillars of smoke and piles of wreckage. And then there was this super large explosion followed by this massive earthquake that knocked me on my ass. The man to the right said as he made wide arm movements. But that was nothing compared to that laugh I heard in the direction where everything was going down. It was like, super maniacal. "Yeah. I don't think what happened here was a bomb. I think it was some sort of fight." The second man said with his arms crossed. "I'd bet my bottom dollar that this was a villain attack." The screen changed again to show a middle-aged woman with black hair with cat ears. I'm not sure if what I saw was real or not, but from where I was standing, I think I saw a person flying across the sky. The crazy thing is that whenever that person moved their arms, everything around them split apart. The woman recounted as she pointed up at the sky where she supposedly saw the figure. But a few minutes later, there was this enormous pillar of fire that shot up to the sky. It got so hot I thought I was going to burn alive. And I was several blocks away, too. The screen changed once more to a petrified older man. He was sitting on a street curb. This was no bomb. No, this was done by two men. Very, very powerful men. I've never seen anything like it. I'm telling you, this was a dash click. Placing the remote control down, the chairman for the HPSC looked away from the projector screen and turned to stare out at the gathered individuals sitting in the expansive meeting room. Sitting alongside the extra-long office table were all of the HPSC's highest-ranked members and officials. They all had grave and vexed expressions as they looked down at the papers before them. What happened in the Florum ward is now out of our control. The narrative has run away so far from us that our official statement is being treated like a conspiracy. The chairman spoke calmly as he looked over at the gathered individuals around the table. Standing beside him, a blonde woman with brushed back hair stepped forward and addressed all of the gathered members. This was the HPSC's vice chairman. As you all have been briefed, we have strong suspicions that the cause of the incident was Sukuna. The VP said, lifting her own remote to show a blurry image of Sukuna dressed in his white kimono and black Hari outfit. The pro-heroes, Ms. Joke and Backdraft, are very confident that he was on the scene right after the mysterious explosion of fire. Sukuna. One of the board members muttered with an annoyed expression. I thought we sent Lady Nagant to handle him. That we did. The chairman said as he adjusted his glasses, an annoyed look in his eyes. Unfortunately, we believe she was killed during her mission. All we found were scraps and pieces of her rifle with a large amount of her blood and hair at the scene. She was no match for Sukuna. That can't be. Nagant failed. What of the security cameras? Another member leaned on the table with a desperate look. Surely there must have been one camera that caught what truly happened in Florum. There were around 358 cameras in that location. The VP said as she scrolled through several slides before landing on a large map with hundreds of excess scattered across it. Unfortunately, they were all either tampered with or destroyed. Could Sukuna have something to do with the Yakuza? That was their territory, after all. A woman with short orange hair said. A bespectacled older man shook his head. That's very unlikely. The Shai Hasaikai compound was reduced to rubble. At most, it seems that a possible battle between the group and Sukuna occurred, resulting in their destruction. That man must have followers. A high-ranked official muttered as she leaned back in her chair. It's inconceivable that a single man can perform such acts all on his own. Whether he works alone or not doesn't matter. What matters is that Sukuna must be taken down at all costs. A dark-skinned board member looked over at the chairman. It won't be long before the public becomes aware of him. And if the level of destruction in Florum is anything to go off from, Sukuna is much too powerful for any normal pro-hero to take on. We need All Might to step in. At the mention of the number one hero, everyone in the room began to utter their agreements and ideas. Standing still, the chairman seethed silently as he watched all those he gathered seemingly dismiss him. This wasn't a shock to the man. He could understand why they were all dismissing him despite his higher rank. It was due to his mishandling of the situation. If only he had handled the situation with Sukuna before the destruction of Florum, then he would still have the confidence of his upper staff. Enough. The chairman spoke loudly, his voice heavy with authority. Slowly, everyone within the room grew silent as they turned to him. I'm aware of the gravity of the situation, and I've made the proper arrangements to bring Sukuna down. I will not allow the so-called demon god to destroy the peace of this country. The chairman stepped forward and gave everyone a stone-cold glance, causing them all to remember why he was the chairman of the HPSC. On that, you have my word. Shimizu Sauta Piri. The aroma of sizzling meat and vegetables wafted around my back courtyard. Smiling, I flipped a piece of tender beef and looked beside me at the two fold-out tables lined with cooked meats, vegetables, drinks, and sweets. What do you think, Eri-chan? Is it tasty? MHM. It's good. It's sweet. I smiled as Kaina wiped the corner of Eri's mouth with a napkin. Eri smiled at her and then went in to take another bite of her candied apple. Brushing her hair back, Kaina ignored her own plate of food in favor of doting on the small girl. Eri-chan. Eri-chan. You need to eat some meat, too. Himiko smiled as she kneeled next to Eri with a piece of grilled steak between her chopsticks. Eri nodded and let herself be fed by Himiko. Enjoying the taste, the little girl chewed happily on the food. We did a good thing, didn't we, Sauta? A bandaged Jin said as he walked up beside me. His ever-present mask was nowhere to be seen. Lifting up his plate, I placed some grilled chicken and mushrooms on his plate. Yeah, it almost made getting stabbed worth it. I grinned and placed some more raw chicken on the grill. Then again, that's not really on Eri. I was just too weak at the time. Plus 10 SP. If you're weak, then what am I supposed to be? The strongest. That's what. Jin proclaimed as he flexed his good arm. Still, what was that move of yours called again? The positive inverted technique. Flipping a thick slice of onion, I turned to him and grinned. Close. It's the reversed cursed technique. It's pretty much when you multiply a negative against itself to get a positive. Easier said than done, though. But now that I understand it, I can pretty much heal any injury I get as long as I have enough cursed energy. That's so broken, Jin muttered as he looked down at his broken arm. It was now in a signed cast held up by a sling. It's been a week since our battle against the Shiha Saikai and the death of Chisaki. Throughout that time, countless reports and stories have been made to cover the unexplainable large-scale destruction that occurred in the Floron ward, where it all went down. You couldn't find a single news station that wasn't covering or creating its own scenarios or stories. The official story supplied by the HPSC and the police was that a bomb had accidentally gone off. However, a large number of the public didn't buy their story. Some were calling it an act of terrorism. Others, a large-scale villain attack. But what interested me the most was that no one had used my name even after a group of heroes spotted me. It's most likely the HPSC keeping the truth of the situation under wraps. Kaina had said after Himiko asked why the truth wasn't being told. They're trying to keep the public from knowing of Sukuna's existence. This made sense. Those in power would do anything to secure the semblance of peace within this country, no matter the cost. Hence Kaina's blooded past. Still, I wasn't too interested in whether or not Sukuna took the credit or the fallout for what had happened. I was more worried about Eri. The young girl wasn't quick to believe me when I told her and everyone else that I had taken down Chisaki. After an hour of talking and convincing her that Chisaki was truly gone and that he would never hurt her again, Eri broke down into tears, causing Kaina and Himiko to forget their list of questions for me in favor of comforting the girl. But once Eri fell asleep from all her crying, it was finally time for me to explain how I survived. Explaining to them what the reversed cursed technique was went about as well as I thought. They understood what I was trying to get at, but the deeper concepts of how the technique worked were impossible for me to explain. It's sorta like this. You have to go fwoosh, fwish, and fwoosh again. Sorta like that. I said as I made these odd hand motions. Safe to say they weren't amused. Himiko was rather annoyed I had knocked her out, but she quickly forgave me. That was on the condition that I would always greet her with a hug for the rest of my life. No matter the time or place. While it was a little embarrassing, it was better than receiving the cold shoulder from her all the time. Unlike Himiko, Jin was extremely happy that I had risen from death with little explanation other than the swooshes and swishes. The man had even given me a quick bro hug after I came back from wiping any traces of Chisaki from the planet. He was a real one for that. Kaina took my explanation in stride. Her words were that my abilities were already strange and powerful enough as they were. Being able to heal myself from the clutches of death shouldn't be that big of a stretch. But the weirdest thing to me was when she hugged me tightly and patted my shoulders. This was weird because she wasn't an overly touchy or emotional person. Well, that was unless it came to Eri. She became quite the mother hen when it came to her. The woman had some crazy maternal instincts. Moving on to Eri, the poor girl was still deeply traumatized by everything Chisaki had done to her. However, when I asked her what she wanted to do, whether that be going to an orphanage or staying with us, she grew hysterical. Eri ran to Himiko and Kaina and began to cry, saying that she wanted to stay with the people who saved and comforted her. I can't believe you, Sukuna-kun. Himiko gave me the stink eye. Sauta-san. You're terrible. Said Kaina. Not cool, bro. Not cool. Jin muttered. Their comments were harsh but not undeserved. Still, I needed to give Eri the choice. I didn't want her to feel like we would decide her future simply because we saved her. Sautonia-san. Would you like to try some? Eri shyly asked after walking over to me. She looked back to Kaina and watched as the older woman gave her a nod. With newfound confidence, Eri held out her half-eaten candy apple toward me. Smiling at her, I kneeled and took a bite from her offered treat. Chewing, I brushed back her straight hair and picked her up. It's delicious. Moving over to the grill, I continued being the grill master and placed the finished beef onto a tray. What do you want to cook next, Eri? How about some broccoli? Can we put my apple on it? We may end up burning it. I grabbed some broccoli with my tongs and placed it on the grill. Here, Let's try and cook some greens. Throughout the night, we all enjoyed a warm feast in honor of Eri. I looked around at my friends as they savored the meal and each other's company. Jin and Himiko were doing their best to make Eri laugh while Kaina and I exchanged amused smiles from our spot beside the tables. Looking up at the star-filled night sky, I let a small smile overtake my face as I enjoyed the company of everyone around me. What's that? That's a penguin. What about that one? That would be a sea otter. Plus 15 SP, Eri smiled at the playful otter from a spot on my shoulders as I stepped closer to the enclosure. She held onto my hair and pulled me to the right towards the next zoo animal. Eri's newly appointed guardian jellyfish Shikigami, Jello, floated above her like a sentinel. Look at that. A panda. Himiko said as she grabbed my hand and pulled both me and my passenger to the next exhibit. Oh. Let's take a picture. I'll do it. I'm an excellent photographer. Jin raised his Canon camera from over his chest and began snapping several shots of us three. Zyko grunted from his spot around Jin's shoulders as the unmasked man moved around to get different angles. From beside him, Kaina smiled softly from behind her thick glasses and newly dyed shoulder-length black hair. Kaina, get in there. Jin said, turning to the woman. I don't know. Please, Onichan. Eri said with a small smile, causing Kaina's weak defenses to crumble. Okay. After counting down, Jin took a picture of us four with a thumbs up. Jello, if you would. I said as I looked over to the jellyfish. Jello floated over to Jin and took his camera. Dashing over, Jin joined the four of us as Jello took our picture. At the sight of the floating camera, several other of the zoo visitors paused and stared in confusion. It didn't take long for them to get over the odd sight, chalking it up to some sort of camera or levitation quirk one of us had. Over the next 2 hours or so, the five of us continued exploring the Kanazawa Zoo, going from exhibit to exhibit as Eri wanted to see all the different kinds of animals with a childish curiosity. The reason we were here was because Jin wanted us all to celebrate Himiko's and my acceptance letters to UA. I didn't particularly care to celebrate, but Himiko suggested we all go to the zoo. After hearing what a zoo was and what it entailed, Eri was super excited to go. That was a blast. Himiko exclaimed as we strolled out of the zoo. She glanced down at Eri from beside her, their hands intertwined. Did you have a good time, Eri-chan? MHM. Eri nodded with a smile as she held up her bag of cotton candy. I had a lot of fun. I'm happy to hear that. As we grew closer to the parking lot where Kaina parked our recently bought Honda SUV, we heard a loud bang off down the road. Kaina, Jin, and I stepped in front of Eri and Himiko as we watched an ongoing battle between a pro-hero and a villain. The battle seemed to be in the villain's favor before some backup arrived for the hero. Now outnumbered and overpowered, the heroes quickly took down the villain with minimal environmental damage. Not bad, I muttered as I helped Eri inside the car. These Kamakura heroes are pretty efficient. True. Jin nodded as he sat down on Eri's left. But what can you expect when it's a 4 versus 1 fight? It was a super unfair fight. Who cares? Himiko said as she sat on Eri's right. I got into the passenger seat, and Kaina got behind the wheel. At least they kept their fight off the street. I hate the traffic the heroes cause with their little fights. From what I remember, Kaina turned on the engine and began driving us out of the parking lot. This section of Kamakura has some UA graduates from a few years back. Makes sense that they're so effective. UA. Eri looked up from her sweet treat with curious eyes. Isn't that the school Sauteronia-san and Himiko Onichan are going to? That's the one. I looked back at Eri and gave her a small smile. She nodded and took another bite of her cotton candy. Enough about this. Let's go grab some lunch. Let's get some ramen sushi. Himiko and Jin said excitedly before turning to each other with challenging looks. Not again. Kaina muttered as she removed her shades. Bringing out a notepad, I flipped through the pages before I arrived at a page with a scoreboard. It was split between Himiko and Jin, with Jin in the lead. My money is on Jin this time around. You? I asked Kaina as I raised a small bundle of bills. Plus 15 SP. Please stop gambling in front of Eri-chan. As we left the zoo, the heated debate on where we would eat commenced between both blondes. General POV. Yes, I have just arrived. Walking through the Narita International Airport, a tall, well-built man with brown hair held a black disposable phone next to his ear. As he walked, he made no attempt to walk around or avoid all those who crossed his path. Those who were shoved away were quick to anger, but one look into the brown-haired man's dead grey eyes caused them to freeze in their curses. Quickly, everyone who stood in his path moved out of the way. Excellent. On the other line, the HPSC chairman nodded as he stared out at Tokyo Bay from the end of a boardwalk. You have full access to all of the HPSC's resources. I want this done as soon as possible. Yes. Understood. The brown-haired man said in a thick accent with German tones. Worry not, I will find this king of curses and bring his head to you. Make sure you do. Remember, you're not the only one who was given this contract. The chairman said as he hung up the call. The head of the HPSC continued to watch the rolling waves of water before throwing his phone into the sea. Turning around, he walked down the boardwalk in the direction of his awaiting driver and car. Shimizu Sauter POV. Himiko flipped through her textbook with a bored expression. Okay, so can you explain this concept again? I'm still having trouble with the periodic table trends, she said, tapping her pencil against her chin. I nodded and sat up from the oversized pink beanbag chair while placing down my manuscript for Order of the Phoenix. After stretching, I walked over to her desk and peered down at her work. Currently, the two of us are located in Himiko's room. It was full of bright colors and full to the brim with girly knickknacks, and a large makeup table sat along the wall. Sure. Think of it like a map. As you move down the groups, the atoms get bigger because of the added electron shells. And as you go across a period, the nucleus gets stronger, pulling those electrons closer, I explained, drawing a quick diagram on one of Himiko's notebooks. Get it? Himiko held her chin and nodded. I see. I don't get it, she replied, smiling. Is that so? Plus 15 SP. Sorry, Himiko muttered with a small bow. It's only thanks to all those nights of cramming we did that I was able to pass the UA entrance exam. Sighing, I rubbed the top of her head. Thanks to her hair being down, as it usually was at home, I was able to pet her unimpeded. It's fine. We just gotta get you to the point where you won't struggle in class. After we start school, I'll help you study some more. Plus 20 SP, Sukuna-kun. Himiko faked, cried, and jumped into my arms. Much to my chagrin. You're so kind. Aha. Now, get back to work. I told you no television if you don't finish this set of problems. I grabbed her head and pushed her back. So mean. It's been 30 minutes. I've studied enough. Himiko whined and gave me her best puppy dog eyes. Please. No more. Fine. I reached down and grabbed her pencil from her hand. Unknown to me, Himiko's thumb traced my own as I plucked her writing utensil away. Flipping to a new page, I scribbled down a graph drawing alongside some numbers. Only if you can answer this question. I'll continue studying. Himiko cried as she flipped open her textbook. You do that. Is Sauter Oniya-san being mean to Himiko Onichan? Eri asked from the cracked door. Behind her, Jin nodded as he watched as I explained several problems to a sulking Himiko. She's crying. Nah. Sauter is just trying to help Toga-chan, Jin whispered as he and Eri continued to watch the study session. At some point, Himiko tried to sneak away, but I placed my hands on her shoulders to keep her in place. I think. So you're saying that what you did back in the Florum ward was only half of the size it could have been? Jin asked as he, Kaina, and I all sat out on the back porch as we watched the starry night sky. Off in the background, Himiko and Eri were watching television. Yup. Nodding, I took a sip of my coffee as puffs of steam flew out my mouth from the chilly air. I had to limit the size of my domain. Otherwise, the scale of destruction would have reached out another 100 meters. Plus 25 SP. Plus 25 SP. Kaina and Jin blinked at the revelation and thought back to the images of the Florum ward from the news. The scale of destruction was already quite wide and horrifying, but to hear that it could have been twice as bad as that was eye-opening. "That's rather impressive," Kaina muttered as she took a sip of tea. "It's one of my most destructive abilities." I closed my eyes and thought back to the moment Malevolent Shrine was slicing and shredding everything apart around me. In the center, Chisaki's body was repeatedly torn to shreds as a look of sheer agony was plastered on his face. As I thought back, an unconscious, sadistic grin grew on my face. I don't think I'll be able to use that domain again. At least not within a populated area. Yeah, that place looks like a parking lot now. Maybe they'll put a mall there. Jin nodded and leaned back in his chair. Still, even after getting as far as we did, we were still able to see that pillar of fire reach the sky. It kinda reminded me of a, well, nuke. Some real scary stuff. Hearing Jin's comparison made me frown. I wouldn't be surprised if everyone who had laid eyes on the divine arrow's effects had mistaken it for a nuclear explosion. "Sorry, Japan. How did you do it?" Kaina asked, her eyes curious. "How were you able to get the police to conduct an evacuation drill?" "I have a guy on the inside. While I wasn't sure I was going to use a domain expansion at the time, I was sure that the nearby civilians could have gotten caught up in our attack." I explained as I finished my drink. I'm glad I did that. Otherwise, as I was at the time, I doubt I would have hesitated using my domain even if there were people close by. Plus 20 SP. Plus 15 SP. Kaina and Jin remained silent at my confession. From there, the three of us sat in silence as we simmered in what I said. "I don't think you would have done it." Kaina turned to me. "Despite what you think and have done, I don't think you disregard those around you without a second thought. Otherwise, you would have killed me instead of offering me to join you." "Kaina-chan is right, Sauta." Jin nodded. "I believe you're a lot kinder than you believe yourself to be." Looking down at the few drops of black liquid in my cup, I wondered if what they said about me was true. Would I not have used my domain if there were people still nearby? Or would I not have cared and used it to erase Chisaki and anyone else who was unlucky enough to be there from the world? No matter the consequences? I'm not sure. You too might be right. Forcing a smile on my face, I raised my head and turned to them. Raising my empty cup, I stood up and motioned indoors. "I'm gonna grab another cup. Be right back." They both nodded at me and began a new conversation between themselves. As I walked inside, I lost my fake smile and grabbed the pot of coffee. "Yes. I hope you're both right." "Sukuna-kun," Himiko said as she walked up behind me. "What's the matter? You all right?" Turning to her, I blinked in confusion as she was once again able to pick up on my troubled state. Looking back, I saw Eri focused on the childish anime that was on the television. "I'm fine," I said after filling my mug. "I was just in my head, is all." Turning to her, I saw that she was unconvinced. Walking forward, she walked up to me and brought me into a tight hug with her head on my shoulder. Placing my mug on the counter, I slowly returned the hug. "Don't forget what I told you that night, okay?" "Yeah, I know." Plus 35 SP, after a few seconds, she pulled back slightly and reached up to my cheeks. Her fingers brushed against my cheeks, causing me to stare at her with half-lidded eyes. Closing her eyes, Himiko began to lean in. "Himiko Onichan, you're going to miss the show," Eri said as she walked into the kitchen, causing Himiko to jump back and turn to her with a flushed face. Tilting her head in confusion, Eri looked back and forth between me and Himiko. "What's the matter? Your faces are all red. Are you too sick?" Plus 55 SP, AR. "No, it's just a little warm here." Himiko fanned herself as she turned to me with a shy and alarmed expression. "Sukuna-kun here must have the heat on too high. Let's go lower it, okay, Eri-chan?" "Okay." Grabbing her little hand, Himiko pulled Eri along toward where the thermostat was. Before they left the kitchen, Himiko turned back and offered me a little wave with a smile. Not waiting for a response, she turned the corner and left. Standing still, I blinked several times before rubbing my warm face with my hand. This complicates things. With a single leap, I crossed through the sky and watched the streets below pass me by in a blur of lights. The dark sky above hung over me as I moved through the city of Tokyo with no real direction. Was she going to kiss me? No, she definitely was. I muttered as I stared up at the crescent moon above. Has our relationship been leading up to this point, and I haven't been able to see it? No. I just didn't want to acknowledge it. My mind replayed back to the events of a few nights ago when Himiko leaned in to kiss me in the kitchen. I had always thought that our relationship was more of a platonic friendship rather than a romantic one. After all, her future was to someday fall in love with Izuku. Just like in canon. I sighed and shook my head. At this point, I've messed with this world so much that nothing is guaranteed. Shit. What if I pushed Izuku away from his future of meeting All Might? Landing on a tall water tower, I stared out at the twinkling city skyline with an annoyed look. Should I not have gotten involved? Despite my thoughts, it was too late to complain about what my actions may or may not have done to the future. What was done was done. I just have to go with the flow and make sure that Izuku got one for all. Somehow, at least. What am I going to do about you, Himiko? It's not that I didn't think she was attractive. No, she was a very pretty girl. She was also one of my closest friends. I'd tear this whole city to shreds for her, but I never thought of her in that light. Or anyone, for that matter. Sure, I've ogled some of the female heroes here and there. But who can blame me? They walked around in these ridiculous skin-tight costumes all the time. What's a young man like myself supposed to do? I've never considered pursuing a relationship with anyone, mainly because I was always busy. My time was filled with various responsibilities, working at my job, helping Mai with her babies, gathering evidence on the HPSC, training Izuku or Keiko, spending time with Jin, Kaina, Himiko, and Eri, writing my books or manga, developing my body and skills, and going out at night as Sukuna. My plate was stacked. Not to mention the upcoming headache that will be UA. Would it be so wrong to be with her? I sighed for what felt like the 100th time and looked over at Zaiko. What do you think I should do? You. Go for it. But what if something goes wrong and we, stop being friends? You. Yeah. That would be bad. We do live in the same house. Too. Maybe I should act like that almost kiss never happened. You. You're right. That would be a pussy move. I nodded at my wormy inventory and rubbed the side of my head. You can be pretty wise. You know that. Hearing that, Zaiko nodded sagely. I guess I'll sleep on it. I jumped up and used the window ledges of the apartment building in front of me to reach its roof. Landing in a crouch, I looked out at the now peaceful city with a small grin. It's nice to see my hard work pay off. Hey, boss. Cromoki said as she landed on Zaiko's head. I found something nearby. So much for that. Bonito flakes. Crow Inumaki nodded as he perched himself beside my foot. That right? Let's go check it out then. General POV, Todoroki Fuyumi and her younger brother, Natsuo, walked leisurely together towards their home. Due to having been behind on some of her work, Fuyumi ended up working into the long night. But when she finished and noticed the time, she called her brother to help walk her home. Despite the city streets being safer now than a few years back, Fuyumi was still a little nervous about walking home alone. Todoroki Fuyumi is a young woman of average height with grey eyes. Her hair is mostly white, with noticeable strands of crimson throughout. It is shoulder length, except for the ear-length side bangs she has and a short clump that falls down her forehead. It's fine, Nei-chan, Natsuo muttered as he helped carry some of his older sister's paperwork through the dark streets of the Shizuoka prefecture. I actually prefer you call me when you get out this late. That way, I don't have to worry if something might happen to you. Todoroki Natsuo is a young man of above-average height with a rather well-built figure and grey eyes. He sports white spiky hair with two short strands hanging down the middle of his forehead. Are you sure? What about your classes? Don't you have any assignments to work on? Fuyumi asked with worry. Like I said, it's fine. Smiling, Fuyumi nodded at him as they continued their walk home. Stepping out of the corner in front of them, A figure appeared in front of them, a dark hoodie pulled low over their face. Fuyumi's heart raced as she watched the figure swiftly reach into his pocket, revealing a knife with a glint that caught the last rays of sunlight. "Give me your phones and wallet. Now," he demanded, his voice low and threatening. "Be quick about it." Fuyumi froze, adrenaline pumping through her veins. Despite her fear, she stepped around Natsuo. "Natsuo, stay behind me," she whispered urgently, trying to shield her brother. She clutched her bag tightly, trying to think clearly. "Nei-chan." Natsuo hissed, his eyes locked on the man with the knife. "Please, just take what you want," Fuyumi said, her voice trembling. "We don't want any trouble." The robber's eyes narrowed, clearly agitated by her hesitation. "Stop wasting my time." From behind the Todoroki siblings, two more figures stepped out of the shadows. Their wide grins broadened as they looked up and down at the siblings. "You heard the man. Give us your stuff, and you both will be on your merry way." "More of them." Natsuo spun around and stepped in front of his older sister. His gray eyes looked down at the metal pipe and knife in their hands. "Shit. What do I do?" Natsuo thought in panic. "Just do what he says," Fuyumi urged, trying to maintain her composure. Slowly, she unzipped her bag and pulled out her phone, wallet, and any other valuables she had. As she did so, she could feel her heart racing. "Here, take it," she said, holding everything out to the man in front of her. Her other hand was still firmly gripping Natsuo's. "You too, boy." The man with the metal bat snapped, glancing nervously at the street as if expecting someone to intervene. Natsuo reached for his wallet, feeling a mix of fear and anger bubble within him. In one swift motion, he threw everything he had over at the two before him. "There. Now leave us alone," he said, his voice steady despite his shaking hands. The pair in the back grinned and picked up Natsuo's belongings while the man in front of Fuyumi grabbed her items. Placing them away, the man with the bat looked Fuyumi up and down. His eyes hungrily took in her rather developed figure. "Hey, you boy." The man raised his bat and leveled it toward Natsuo's face. "She's your sister, right? You have what you want. Now leave us the hell alone." Natsuo roared, his body moving protectively in front of his older sister. Rage and terror burned within him. "Hey, big sister." The man turned to Fuyumi, who slowly turned to him. "If you don't want us to kill your brother, start stripping." Hearing such a demand, Natsuo exploded with rage and rushed the man. "You!" Wham! Natsuo! Fuyumi kneeled next to her brother after the man with the bat slammed his weapon onto the side of his head, knocking him down. Seeing this, the other two men laughed at Natsuo's pathetic attempt. "Natsuo!" Fuyumi yelled in worry. "You heard my friend, didn't you?" The man in front of Fuyumi lowered his knife over the injured and bleeding Natsuo. "Go on then. Otherwise, I'll gut the kid." Feeling trapped, Fuyumi slowly nodded and stood up. With blurry vision, Natsuo looked over at his sister with dread. "We're the number 2 hero's children. Endeavor is our father. So stop this." Natsuo roared, angry at the men who were trying to make his older sister deface herself and angry at himself for having to rely on his father. "Endeavor?" one of the men said in amusement. "Yeah, right. You two have white hair, and the number 2 has red hair. Nice try." "It's true." Natsuo cried before his face was kicked to the side. "Natsuo! Enough. Don't hurt him anymore. I'll do what you want. Just stop hurting him." Fuyumi cried as she grabbed the hem of her turtleneck shirt and began to pull it over her stomach. Seeing this, the 3 men grinned and watched as the bottom of her shirt was now under her breasts. "Stop it, Nei-chan." Natsuo glared hatefully at those around him. "Don't do this." How pathetic. Natsuo jerked his head up as he watched the man with the metal bat fly off to the empty road beside them after black and gold staff slammed itself into his skull. Spinning around, the man beside him received a blow over the top of his head. With a crack, the robber's head slammed itself onto the concrete below with a sickening crunch. Fuyumi, Natsuo, and the remaining robber all turned to Sukuna as he stepped over the unconscious man below him with his staff over his shoulders. Panicking, the robber tried to move toward Fuyumi to try and use her as a hostage or shield, but before he grew too close, the man's upper face exploded with blood from a long slice that ripped his eyes apart. "Gah! My eyes!" The robber cried as he fell onto the ground, his blood spilling everywhere. "Pull your shirt down already," Sukuna muttered as he walked past Fuyumi and Natsuo. Right." Fuyumi quickly pulled her shirt down and kneeled over her brother. They watched as Sukuna stood over the robber and stared at him with a dismissive look. Flipping his staff, Sukuna slammed it down onto the bleeding man's head with a thud, knocking him out. Shaking his head, Natsuo's vision started to clear. As he looked up at Sukuna, he couldn't shake the feeling that the man seemed familiar. Suddenly, it clicked. This was the same man who had burned a person to death in the streets of Yokohama. Natsuo recalled the hastily recorded video taken by a pedestrian that day, and there was no doubt about it. This was the very same person. Fuyumi. Get behind me. Natsuo gritted his teeth and forced himself up. His grey eyes focused on the very dangerous man before them. "How pathetic," Sukuna said as he turned to Natsuo, causing the college student to balk. "You couldn't even protect your sister. You call yourself a man." "What?" "Who dash be quiet," Sukuna muttered in a low tone, promptly causing Natsuo to grow silent. "Trash like you don't get to talk." Walking over to the other two men, Sukuna swiped his hands and sliced their eyes apart as well. Seeing the violent sight, Natsuo flinched and stepped back in fear. Just as Sukuna was about to leave, Fuyumi stepped forward with trembling legs. Thank you for saving my brother and me," Fuyumi said with her hands in front of her. She then gave him a slight bow. "Thank you." Remaining still, Sukuna didn't offer a response before he leaped into the night sky, leaving the two Todoroki siblings alone on the street with three mutilated men. Shimizu Saotopu. I watched the cops and paramedics collect the three bleeding but still alive fools that were strewn around on the street. Off to the side, Fuyumi and Natsuo were being attended by a curvaceous young woman who had big red-orange eyes and pointy teeth. Her most distinguishing feature is her long, flaming yellow-green hair, with two bangs on each side and a wider bang extending from the center of her forehead to the right. This is the pro-hero Burnin, also known as Kamiji Mo. So that's Burnin. I stood in the shadows down the street and watched everything proceed with an appreciative nod. She's a looker all right. Moving on from the attractive hero, I looked over at Fuyumi and Natsuo. The female Todoroki looked shaken and was being comforted by Mo. Off a few feet away, Natsuo had a bandage around his head. He had a thoughtful but angry expression on his face. "I think you went too far." Standing beside me, a clone said as he looked Mo up and down. It was a tough situation he was in. You can't expect everyone to be a kick-ass fighter. "Yeah, I know." I nodded and leaned against the cool wall behind me. Hopefully, he can get over this so he can grow from it. I know Endeavor ain't teaching him how to be a man. Or, well, raising him at all. It was a 3-on-1. With weapons. My clone thumped my chest with an eye roll. Cut him some slack. I'm sure after tomorrow, he'll join a martial arts gym and hit the weights. Either that or blame it on his dad. Nodding, I watched the scene continue for a while longer. Looking around, I still didn't see a sign of Endeavor showing up. An action that Fuyumi seemed to copy me in. Poor girl. A very fine girl, though. Dude. Right. My bad. Dismissing my clone, I turned around and leaped up onto the rooftops to begin to head home. As I moved around, I looked over at my accumulated points. Total SP, 5,701. Use 1,500 SP, I said while spinning the gacha machine dial in midair. You have pulled Inumaki Toad's cursed technique, cursed speech. Rank, Diamond. Mustard leaf. Crow Inumaki said as he, Crow Moki, and Crow Panda flew alongside me. Couldn't have said it better myself. I hummed as I stared into the nervous eyes of Shinso Hitoshi. Standing a few feet away from him, Izuku and Keiko looked at one another with nervous smiles. Sitting beside one another on a bench next to the two, Mai and Himiko sipped on some milk tea as a gust of wind blew through the public park we were at. "Tell me, boy, why are you here?" I asked Hitoshi as I leveled a serious look at him. He looked at Izuku nervously, only to receive a go-on motion from him. Plus 10 SP. Well, I was hoping you'd take me on as a student. Hitoshi rubbed the back of his head as he stared me in the eyes. "You see, I want to be a hero. And Midoriya-san has told me that you're the reason he's as strong as he is. So, please, I ask you to take me on as your student." The purple-haired boy finished by offering me a bow. I see. Nodding, I walked around him and inspected him closely, much to his discomfort. I stroked the beard I didn't have and nodded to myself, much to Hitoshi and everyone else's confusion. Himiko, however, found my teasing funny. "A hero, you say? So you want to help people?" With a serious expression, Hitoshi nodded. "I do. My quirk allows me to control people after they answer any question I ask. Everyone says that it's a villain's quirk. But I don't agree with that. I want to help people and be a hero. To do that, I want to make it into UA to become the best hero I can be." "Oh, that was pretty solid." I looked over my shoulder at Izuku. At his nod, I turned back to Hitoshi and patted his shoulder. "Okay, I'll help you out." I smiled at him and stepped back a few feet. "From this point on, you'll call me Shimizu-sensei. You'll follow all my instructions without complaints. As long as you agree to that, I'll whip you into shape." Plus 25 SP. Smiling, Hitoshi nodded. Thank you, Shimizu-sensei." "Great. Now then, let's see what you got." I took off my light jacket and threw it down on the grass. Rolling my shoulders, I motioned for Hitoshi to attack me. "Come on. I don't got all day." Plus 10 SP. Hold on. You mean we're starting right now? Of course. You only have a year or so before you can take UACE entrance exam. That doesn't give me much time to beat you into shape," I said as he quickly removed his hoodie. Plus 15 SP. Beat me into shape. Stepping forward with a nervous look, Hitoshi slipped into a stiff and unrefined fighting stance. I see Izuku has taught you a few things already," I said as I picked up on all the openings he was showing. "Yeah, I asked him if he could teach me, but he told me it would be better if you taught me instead," Hitoshi said as he and I moved closer to one another. "The most he taught me was his stance and a few punches." "That true, Izuku? You giving out my teachings?" I asked Izuku without turning to him, causing him to freeze up. Keiko chuckled at him as he blushed in embarrassment. "I told you to ask first," Keiko whispered as she patted Izuku's shoulder. Plus 5 SP. Plus 15 SP. I did. Sorry, Sauta-san. I should have asked you first," Izuku said with a little bow. Waving him off, I raised my fists and grinned. "It's fine. Now then, show me what you got, Hitoshi." General POV. I was hoping Su-chan would have held back a little. Maybe ease Shinso-kun into it. Keiko muttered as she and everyone else watched as Sauta repeatedly assaulted Hitoshi with punches and kicks. But that I was probably asking for too much. The purple-haired young man tried his best to dodge or attack back, but his inexperience was clear as day. Sauta grinned at the sloppy left punch Hitoshi tried to use to strike him in the face. Grabbing his wrist, Sauta used an over-the-shoulder toss to slam Hitoshi on the floor. "He is holding back," Izuku said with a wince. "Otherwise, Shinso-kun would have been out cold already." "That's true." Himiko nodded as she watched Sauta slap the back of Hitoshi's head. "Whenever we train together, Sauta-kun doesn't generally hold back too much. Says it's because the real world won't hold back either." I didn't know he was training you too, Himiko-chan." I turned to Himiko with a surprised look. "Do you want to be a hero, too? With your quirk, I'm sure you'd be a great hero." Ever the quirk enthusiast, Izuku turned away from the merciless beatdown of his newest friend to look at Himiko with excitement. Your quirk would allow you to be one of the best infiltration heroes ever. The sheer potential of becoming anyone is way too high. And all you need is a bit of their blood. Sure, getting the blood itself may be a challenge, but I'm sure with the right support gear, you'd. All three girls smiled as Izuku fell into another one of his extensive quirk analysis rambles. He was speaking so quickly that his sentences sounded like an incoherent mess. However, this was nothing new for the three of them at this point. So, as always, they nodded along with easygoing smiles. As Izuku-kun said, "Your quirk has a lot of potential," Keiko said as she walked around Izuku and clamped a hand over his mouth, causing him to blush in embarrassment as he finally realized he was rambling. "I know you and Su-chan start UA in a week, but do you want to eventually become a hero?" "A hero?" Himiko muttered in wonder as the memories of her parents' harsh words filled her head. Demon, monster, and non-human came to mind. "I don't know. I don't think I'm suited to be one. I think you'd be a good one." Surprisingly, it was Mai who said this. Everyone turned to the pink-haired inventor as she gazed warmly at Sauta as he sat on Hitsuhi's battered body while drinking a water bottle. "But in the end, that'll be your choice to make. And if you ever become one, I'll support you 100% as your personal hero support gear specialist," Mai said as she tilted her steampunk goggles. "Mai-chan," Himiko whispered before she hugged the now uncomfortable pink-haired inventor otaku. "Thank you." Yeah. Please release me now." "Nope." Himiko rubbed her right cheek against Mai's while she smiled in happiness. She was happy to know she had so many people who believed in her and weren't disgusted by her quirk. It truly felt as if she was on cloud 9 at the moment. Looking over at Sauta and Hitoshi, she watched as the black-haired object of her affection was going over what he and his newest student would begin working on. As she watched them speak, Himiko couldn't help but feel a pang of anxiety rise within her. After the incident in the kitchen all those days ago, she and Sauta have been awkward around one another. At times, they were able to interact normally with one another when it came to eating their meals with everyone else in their household or when it came to training. However, things became awkward whenever they were left alone. Himiko and he would look away from one another as they fumbled over what to say. Thankfully, it wouldn't take long for Eri or Jin to pop up to break that tension. "What am I going to do?" Himiko wondered as she leaned onto Mai's shoulder. A pensive look on her face. "Why did I do that? If I didn't, then nothing would have changed between us. We'd still be having fun and talking about random stuff together. Now everything's messy. All because I wanted to kiss him." "Himiko-chan." Keiko leaned forward, causing the blonde to blink out of her thoughts. Mai, who had picked up on Himiko's downtrodden expression, was patting the girl's shoulder mechanically like her own mother did to her whenever one of her inventions blew up. "Is everything okay? You seem a little down," Keiko said. Sitting up, Himiko rubbed her hands together and smiled softly. "I'm okay. Sorry, I was just thinking about how UA will be. Yeah, I'm just getting worried about what kinds of classes they're going to have." "Is that so?" Keiko said with a thoughtful smile. She didn't press on the subject out of respect for her privacy. "I wouldn't worry if I were you. You'll do just fine. Just believe in yourself." They're done," Izuku muttered as he watched Sauta and Hitoshi walk toward them. Or, in Hitoshi's case, limping toward them. From the corner of her eyes, Mai noticed Himiko stare longingly at Sauta. Feeling a tightness around her chest, Mai frowned and looked down. "Am I sick or something?" Mai thought, oblivious to her feelings. Shimizu Sauta POV. After I was done beating training Hitoshi, I gave him a personalized routine for him to follow. That included what he should eat and which exercises he would do independently. We would meet together every day at the hidden training ground at the Park Izuku, and I frequented for his training. There, I would try to bring him up to speed enough so he could at least keep up with his future peers. With the aid of his quirk, I was sure he could put up a good fight at his own entrance exams. Maybe he'd even get into Class 1A or 1B. With that out of the way, everyone went their own way home while Himiko and I took the train. We would normally take New, but it was still relatively bright outside, which was why we currently found ourselves standing in a relatively packed train. Due to how full it was, we were standing with our hands holding onto the handrails. Did you really have to smack him around like that? Himiko asked as she giggled at the memory. Grinning, I looked up and nodded. Probably not, but that's how I started Izuku out. Besides, Hitoshi took it like a champ. The train shook slightly, causing Himiko to lean into my side. She and I stiffened as our arms rubbed on one another before she quickly righted herself. From there, the two of us rode along in silence. Her lightly blushing cheeks caused my own to heat up at the sight. Plus 35 SP. I go from fighting some of the worst society has to offer without blinking to a nervous teenager when it comes to romance. How sad. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her hand move slowly until it was only a few centimeters away from my own. In the end, she sighed and began to pull away. Here. I reached out and grabbed her hand, holding it firmly in my own. This should help. Can't have you tumbling around. We still have another half hour to go. Her cheeks burned at the contact. With a broad smile, Himiko nodded and squeezed my hand. MHM. Thanks. Closing my eyes, I decided that I couldn't keep ignoring Himiko's feelings for me. That would be a cowardly move only a harem protagonist would make. Even so, I wouldn't rush this. If this was meant to be, I wanted to take my time and let things play out. Because if things between her and me didn't work out, I at least hoped we could still be friends. Ah, that reminds me. I abruptly said, turning to her. I'll be going away for the weekend. I have some business I need to take care of. Tilting her head cutely, Himiko's expression grew serious. Leaning in, she whispered. Is it another job? Is the Sukyuna attack force moving out? Due to her close proximity, I was able to pick up the flowery, sweet smell of her shampoo. Before I could continue breathing in her scent like a degenerate, I pushed her back gently. No, nothing like that. I shook my head and stared out at the blurring buildings outside the train. Remember that one Shikigami I told you about? Plus 25 SP. Hold on, you don't mean that one. Yep. It's finally time to subjugate the Divine General himself. Mahoraga. This will work fine. Jumping off the hoverboard I created using my construction technique and mechanical knowledge, I landed on a patch of dirt and looked around at the large, empty island Crow Gojo had found. I know, right? Pretty sweet. Crojo said as he flew around above me with Crow Ghetto landing on my left shoulder. Satoru, mind your manners in front of Shimizu-sama. Nah. Crojo said as he landed on my head. Ignoring the two bickering birds, I walked over to the center of the island, which was located 500 kilometers away from Japan's mainland. At the center of this untouched chunk of dirt, a rise of land emerged, dotted with clusters of vibrant wildflowers. Here and there, patches of tall grass danced in the wind. To the east, small, jagged hills jutted out erratically. All right, you two, time to bounce, I said, causing them to hop off and fly around me. It's time to get to work. Nodding, both birds flew away from the island. Their little flapping wings pushed them out of sight. Reaching over, I placed Zyko on the hoverboard and pushed it out to sea once I programmed it to stop 300 meters out of the island's range. Sorry, bud. Can't let you get caught up in this. If you get hit by the sword of extermination, that's it. Better safe than sorry. Gah. Zyko nodded as it glided over the ocean's waters. After I was sure Zyko was out of range, I took a deep breath to calm my erratic nerves. Despite knowing what is coming, the thought of summoning Mahoraga is still nerve-wracking. Despite what I said, I grinned in excitement and raised my fists up parallel to each other. In all of sorcerer history, there's only been one sorcerer who's managed to subjugate this Shikigami. And after today, there will be two. Below me, my shadows danced and expanded all over the island. The once orange-yellow sky from the early morning hours instantly disappeared, leaving me alone in a pitch black. With this treasure, I summon. Appearing into existence, 4 wolves made of shadows and 4 frogs made of light faded in front of me. With several loud howls, the wolves cried out into the darkness as if in welcome. 8-handled sword. Divergent Scylla Divine General. Mahoraga. Behind me, A large 3.2-meter tall figure wrapped in a cocoon blinked to life. Dozens of glowing cords were intertwined with it, and glimmers of light fizzled all around. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the darkness as a wide maw filled with teeth emerged from the top of the cocoon. In an instant, all the cords snapped together, and a gust of steam burst around the cocoon. With a powerful rip, four extensive wings tore free from the confines of the cocoon, revealing what was inside. A towering, muscular humanoid figure with 4 wings protruding from its eye sockets flexed its massive muscles as it stepped forward. Swinging from the back of its head was a tail-like appendage as the Shikigami's mouth released a low moan. Around its right hand were grey wrappings, while its loose black hakama pants were held up by a white sash. Hovering just above the Shikigami was a large 8-handled Dharma wheel. Jumping as far back as I could, I narrowly dodged a downward punch that split the ground where I once stood. Grinning, I looked over at Mahoraga as he turned to me with a large frown. Jutting out of its right fist came the sword of extermination. Amazing! The Divine General himself. I yelled as we stared at one another. Stepping forward, I raised my hands and made the Enma palm sign. Sorry, Mahoraga, but I can't risk you adapting to Shrine. So let's hurry this up and have you join the team. Domain expansion. Malevolent Shrine. Due to being composed of cursed energy, Mahoraga was subject to being affected by my Shrine's Cleave attack. An attack that automatically augmented itself depending on its target's curse energy reserves. This was an attack I couldn't properly use in a world where its humans lacked cursed energy. This left me to rely solely on Dismantle unless I could place my hands on my intended target to manually use Cleave. Unfortunately for the Divine General, he was immediately bombarded by both deadly attacks within the domain's sure hit area of effect, which was a whopping 200-meter radius. This resulted in the island and sea around us being ripped to shreds until nothing was left. His trying to adapt. I smiled at the Shikigami. Unfortunately for you, I didn't give you the time to adapt to Cleave or Dismantle. Within a few seconds of my domain's activation, Mahoraga was torn to shreds, leaving behind a rolling Dharma wheel on the torn-apart ground. Deactivating my domain, I walked toward the wheel and picked it up. With a satisfied grin, I dropped the wheel back into my shadow. That makes 10. Raising my hands, I resummoned Mahoraga. With this treasure, I summon. Rising from my shadows, the subjugated Divine General stood behind me, ready for my command. Let's see, we have 2 days to get you as beefed up as we can, I said as I raised my hands, causing roaring flames to appear over one arm while wisps of ice appeared over the other. With 18 cursed techniques available to me, 17 if we don't count the limitless since I still can't use that properly, I'm sure we can get you to adapt to most of them. Mahoraga said nothing. He merely nodded as he understood my intentions through our connection. The Divine General's most notable power is its adaptation to any and all phenomena, made visible through the turning of its wheel. If the General is hit by a particular attack, the wheel turns once the attack is analyzed, and Mahoraga adapts. If its adversary uses that same technique again, Mahoraga will counter it from then on. Mahoraga's adaptation process begins when it analyzes an attack as soon as it experiences it. The progress of this adaptation is measured by the number of times the 8-handled wheel spins. After a certain period, the adaptation is complete. During this time, if Mahoraga is struck by the same attack again, the adaptation process speeds up with each additional hit. Even after its adaptation is finished, Mahoraga can continue to analyze the attack and develop various strategies to counter it. Generally speaking, Mahoraga's adaptations can be defensive in nature, allowing it to become physically resistant or immune to attacks while also healing any injuries sustained prior to the adaptation. Additionally, these adaptations can be auxiliary, enabling Mahoraga to perceive normally invisible attacks. Moreover, Mahoraga can also adopt offensive adaptations, which allow it to modify the properties of its own attacks so that it can bypass enemy defenses. If done carefully, it was possible to have Mahoraga adapt to the point where almost nothing could affect it, making it the ultimate weapon and shield that no living being could hope to overcome. That was unless its opponent had a powerful cheating ability as well. But I'll deal with that issue when it rolls around. I knew I wouldn't be able to push Mahoraga to adapt as far as I wanted in these short 2 days. But that was a non-issue. I had several more nights after today and tomorrow to continue his adaptations. Oh, man. We're going to be so broken. I laughed and prepared myself for the non-stop assault I was about to unleash on the Divine General. I then remembered that Zyko was still floating over the sea several meters away. Right. Let's go get Zyko first. General Po. Amidst the hum of machinery and the soft glow of fluorescent lights, Hatsumai stood focused, her brow slightly furrowed in concentration from within her workshop. Clad in a grease-stained coverall, she knelt beside a large, disassembled engine, its metallic parts scattered around her like puzzle pieces yet to be fitted together. With her toolbox at her side, she reached for a wrench, her fingers nimble and precise. The rhythmic clinking of tools against metal filled the air as she tightened bolts with steady determination. She took a moment to wipe her brow, glancing over the intricate network of wires and components. Mai had always been fascinated by how things worked, a curiosity that had blossomed into a passion for engineering. Each piece she handled felt alive in her hands, a challenging puzzle that begged for the right solution. Once she found that solution, she was free to innovate and improve on the original design. As she paused to consult her notes, the world outside faded away. The engine's mechanical heart seemed to pulse in time with her own, as if reacting to her every move. She took a deep breath and dove back into her task, her fingers deftly rerouting a stubborn wire. With each adjustment, she imagined the engine roaring to life. Stepping back to inspect her work, Mai quickly grew distracted and turned back at one of the most precious babies within her workshop. A set of mechanical arms and a chest plate sat strapped on a mannequin. These mechanical arms were the support gear she and Sauta had been developing for Izuku to use in his future hero career. Thanks to many hours of hard work and testing, she and Sauta were able to cycle through 3 new interpretations of the arms. This resulted in MK for standing proud on her old battered mannequin. Stepping up to it, Mai brushed a gloved and dirty hand over the arms with a soft smile. The memories of her and Sauta spending countless hours working together played through her mind. Our baby, Mai muttered as she leaned her head on the newly improved chest plate. Closing her eyes, Mai rested for a moment. Her heart began to beat faster and faster when an image of Sauta's grinning face filled her mind. Blinking in confusion, she stepped back and wondered why her mind had been thinking of her longtime friend so often. Whenever she thought of him, a pang of sadness also filled her heart when he wasn't around. Frowning, Mai walked over to her break area to grab herself a small chocolate. Looking down at a yellow sticky note, she read the handwritten note left by Sauta. Don't eat all these in one go. They weren't cheap, so be sure to enjoy them slowly. The note said. Feeling her cheeks warm up, Mai began to wonder if she was coming down with some sort of bug or sickness. After unwrapping the candy, she popped it into her mouth and began enjoying the sweet treat. Maybe I should call him, Mai mumbled as she brought out her phone. But before she could press on his contact info, she remembered the text he sent her and everyone else in their little group chat. Sauta, I'll be out the entire weekend. I'm doing something important, so I won't be available. I'll talk to you all on Monday. Ah, that's right, Mai said in disappointment before moving back to her current project. As she grabbed her tools to continue working, she couldn't help but smile at the thought of when she would get to see Sauta again. Now then, let's see how we can improve you, baby number 56. Sitting up, I blearily looked around my Spartan bedroom and yawned. Rubbing the sleep out of my eyes, I tossed my blanket off and stood up. After performing a few stretches, I walked inside my bathroom and let my body go on autopilot as I brushed my teeth, showered, and did my business. Once I was done, I quickly got changed into my new school uniform. Said uniform consists of a long sleeve, button-up white shirt, dark blue-green pants, a grey blazer with blue-green stripes on the collar and hem of the sleeves, and a red tie. Eyeing the tie in annoyance, I tossed it over my shoulder and slipped on Yuji's Jujutsu uniform under my blazer. Its red hood sat over the grey blazer rather comfortably. Before I left my room, I grabbed my backpack and lifted Zyko over my shoulders, disturbing his own sleep. Gah. Time for school, bud. Gah. No, I can't leave you behind. Reaching the main living area, I noticed Kaina was up already with a mug of coffee in her hand. She was reading a book on child development while a stack of pancakes and fruit sat on the dining table. I see you're taking the role of Aries' caretaker seriously, I said as I served myself some breakfast and coffee. Thanks for the food. Nodding, Kaina looked over at me and inspected my uniform. Where's your tie? That death trap? Somewhere in my room. I cut up some of my food and began to eat. Kaina frowned and closed her book. Walking over to me, she stood behind me and began to mess with my hair. Oi. I rather like the "I just woke up like this" look. Plus 10 SP, smiling. She shook her head as she finished tousling my hair into a more presentable look. I know you're just going to UA to mess around, but you can at least look the part. It is one of Japan's most elite schools, after all. Stepping back, she smiled and nodded at her hard work. There. That's better. Frowning, I looked away from her and muttered, "Thanks." "You're welcome." It was odd to have someone act like an older sibling toward me. Considering my age and past experiences, having my hair tousled around was a bit embarrassing. But I wouldn't say I didn't like it. Who wouldn't want a hot older woman fussing over them? Especially someone like Kaina? I'd be a fool to wave off her help and support like a bratty child. She wasn't like this with me after she first moved in. No, Kaina only began acting like a pseudo-older sister toward Himiko and me after the attack on the Shai Heisaikai. Maybe it could have something to do with her finding my skewered bloody body and thinking I was dead. But who knows? I certainly wasn't about to look a gift horse in the mouth. I liked being pampered here and there. Thank you very much. Before I forget, here. Take this. Kaina reached beside her chair, where a black gift bag sat today. Reaching over, I accepted it with a small thanks and peered inside. This is. Reaching into the bag, I raised a familiar-looking thick black and white mask. The mask was quite intimidating to behold. On the right side, there were two large eyes that appeared to follow anyone who looked at it. In contrast, the left side featured two much thinner and smaller sharp eyes. The rest of the mask had a smooth, clean texture, while my facial tattoos were imprinted over it. "I saw you drawing this a few weeks back," Kaina said as she motioned for me to try it. Placing it on, I felt the mask straps secure themselves tightly, but not uncomfortably, around my head. Now you don't have to run around in that ridiculous hood to hide your identity anymore. Removing the mask, I stared down at it without any expression on my face. Seeing this, Kaina grew worried before I turned to her with a genuine smile. "Thank you, Kaina." Plus 55 SP, R. Kaina blinked as my expression caught her off guard. Slowly, a warm smile spread over her face as well. "You're welcome, Sauta-san." Reaching over, I placed the mask into Zaiko and continued to eat as Kaina returned to her book. We both enjoyed the silent peace between us. "UA. Let's go." Himiko yelled as she, Jin, and Eri ran into the living room with excitement. Himiko was dressed in a uniform similar to mine but suited for her gender. That just meant she had a skirt and black leggings. Well, it was nice while it lasted. "Oh, are those delicious pancakes I'm seeing?" Jin announced with a flourish as he grabbed 3 plates. "My favorite. Actually, I'm a waffle man." "Pancakes. Pancakes." Eri clapped as she sat down beside me. "Good morning, Sauteronia-san." "Good morning, Eri," I said as I brushed the girl's hair back, causing her to giggle. Her small, almost non-existent horn sitting over her forehead. Plus 10 SP, "Good morning, Sukuna-kun." Himiko ran behind me and hugged me from behind, causing her chest to press into my upper back. "Are you excited?" "I'm excited. Let's go." "Heh. Oh, yeah. Super excited." Plus 10 SP, "Your voice says otherwise." Himiko and I stepped off the train and made our way through the bustling crowds in the train station. As we walked, our UA uniforms attracted curious glances from several other students and adults. This wasn't too surprising, as it was common knowledge that those who graduated from UA would eventually become great heroes. However, when it came to students from other departments, people tended to lose interest. Leaving the train station, the two of us ignored the stares from those around us and continued on our way to the UA campus. "Hey, Sauta-kun," Himiko said in a nervous voice as she came to a stop, which was a complete 180 from her early excited attitude. "Can we talk?" Pausing, I looked back at her and noticed her anxious expression. Sure. Listen. I've been thinking about Saito-kun and Sayaka-chan. Himiko looked at me with a tight expression. While I'm happy for everything you did to help, I can't help but feel guilty about how things went down. So I was wondering if there was anything you could do to help them. Ah. I nodded and looked up at the morning sky. Those two. Plus 15 SP. Yeah. Closing my eyes, I sighed and rubbed the back of my head. If I was being honest, I had completely forgotten those two kids. They were only a means to an end. Turning back to Himiko, I saw the look of regret in her eyes. This issue must have been chewing away at her for a while. How didn't I notice? I suppose. I can try. I met this shifty criminal lawyer a year ago who can probably help them out. I said as I thought back to the man who I had run into during one of my nights as Sukuna. On that night, I had found the lawyer tied up and about to be executed by two of his past clients. While I didn't know this when I stepped in, the lawyer quickly thanked me and pledged himself to me once he realized who I was. From what I remember, the lawyer worked out of the back of a day spa and nail salon somewhere in Saitama. Despite his roach-like behavior, I came to realize that he was actually really good at his job. He also had an odd slogan as well. Better call something or another. I can't make any promises, but I'll do what I can, I said, causing a large, thankful smile to grow on Himiko's face. Plus 25 SP. That's perfect. Thank you so much. Himiko jumped next to me and hugged my arm into her chest. Yeah, don't worry about it. Let's get moving. We don't want to be late on our first day. UA High School. This institution is the #1 ranked school for heroics and is considered the top hero academy in the country. With an acceptance rate of less than 2% and a student body of approximately 225 students per year, UA High School is a highly sought-after institution for any aspiring hero. It was the school that helped give rise to some of Japan's most famous and successful heroes. Heroes such as All Might, Endeavor, Best Jeanist, and many more, all of which had entered the top 10 of Japan's hero rankings. With all this in mind, if you wanted to guarantee your position as a great future hero, you do everything in your power to attend UA. But if your name is Shimizu Sauter, then you couldn't care less about all these accolades or fancy-schmancy state-of-the-art training facilities. Class 1D, Class 1D, I muttered as Himiko and I walked through the bustling hallways of UA in search of our class. As fate would have it, Himiko and I were lucky enough to be placed in the same class. A fact that made her super happy once we found out about our classroom placements. Oh, over there. Himiko said as she pointed over at the ridiculously big door down the hall. Despite its size, the door was rather easy to slide open. Stepping inside, we looked over the classmates we'd be sharing a rather big classroom with for the next 3 years. Some colorful characters in here, I said as I walked over to the front of the classroom, where a seating chart was posted. It's in alphabetical order. Himiko scanned the seating chart and jumped for joy when she saw that she would be sitting behind me. Considering her last name started with a T while mine started with an S, this wasn't very surprising. Let's go say hi to our new neighbors. Himiko grabbed my hand and dragged me to our seats. Once there, I threw my backpack down beside my chair and slumped down. Placing her own backpack down, Himiko looked to our left, where a rather plain boy with brushed back red and black hair sat today. He had a disappointed expression on his face as he stared blankly at his desk. I didn't make it. I didn't make it into the hero course. I'm a failure. The boy muttered. From what I recalled from the seating chart, this guy's name was Konya Toshio. Who's this sad sack? Himiko uttered, unimpressed. Ever hear of not kicking a man while he's down? I said, turning to her. You want this sad sack to cry or something? Plus 5 SP. Who the hell are you two? Toshio rose to his feet, an annoyed expression on his plain face. Don't you know that talking about others is rude? Apologize right now. Nah. Himiko and I said. Plus 8 SP. What do you mean, nah? Okay. Pause. Sliding between us was a short girl with long black hair and green eyes. Tied around one of the bangs that framed her face was a long red string. "Let's all get along, okay? We're going to be classmates after all." "Who are you?" I asked as I peered at her. The black-haired girl turned to me and flinched as she picked up on the negative energy that I regrettably emitted. +5 SP, AR, I'm Ogasawara Hikari. Hikari said as she forced a happy smile on her face. She spun away from me and waved at Himiko. "Let's all be good friends." "Okay." Himiko smiled and pulled out her phone. "Let's exchange numbers then." With a sigh, I ignored the indigent Toshio and happily chattering pair of girls and leaned my head on my desk. "I want to go home." From in front of me, a rather tall and well-muscled male student turned to me with a large grin. "You want to go home on the first day of your high school career? Now, we can't have that." +5 SP. Looking up, I squinted my eyes at the tall, black-haired, grey-eyed bundle of annoying cheer that was my desk mate. "Heh." At my comment, Hoshino Juru chuckled and patted my back as if we were longtime chums. "Don't use dismantle. Don't use dismantle. Don't use dismantle. I'm looking forward to our wonderful 3 years together, my friend." Juru's teeth sparkled as he offered me a thumbs up. My negative energy seemingly had no effect on him. "Ah. Where are my manners? My name is Hoshino Juru. It's a pleasure to meet you, Shimizu-kun. Is it too late to drop out?" I ignored everyone around me as all the remaining students who would make up my class filled the classroom. As everyone talked and mingled, I let my mind wander to the successful release of the TMNT movie that came out 3 months ago. The movie itself had some of the best animation the series has had thus far while adapting one of the most famous runs from my old world, The Last Ronin. While I tried to push for that R rating at the beginning, I was outvoted by the NAPPA's president and TOHO's board of directors. Keeping the PG-13 movie would help secure more ticket sales and not alienate a large part of our younger audience. Despite the lack of excessive blood and violence, the movie performed extremely well and tied a neat bow to the Turtle Brothers story. The movie racked up $196.2 million in ticket sales worldwide during its theatrical run, or $29,490,455,498.40 in yen, earning me a very decent chunk of change. I used some of that money to decorate and customize the hell out of Aries' room. Hopefully, this trend will continue once my very popular DBZ manga anime has its first movie release. Unlike in my original world, I would weave the non-canon films into the canon proper to maximize my earnings. The movies were set up to be events one couldn't hope to miss in order to get the full experience. At least, that's what NAPPA's president and I agreed we'd call it after seeing the success of The Last Ronin. It was a little scummy to push my audience to watch a movie to get the whole story. But hey, I have to make my money. Thinking back, I could still remember the amazed expressions on everyone's faces when I took them all to the Toho Theater for the movie's opening night. Izuku and Keiko's expressions were still the funniest of the bunch. Usually, tickets like these were incredibly hard to get a hold of, especially the seats I had. When they asked where I got the tickets, I told them I won them in a raffle, considering I still hadn't told everyone outside my household that I was Gij. When should I do that? Alright, everyone. Take your seats. A slow, monotonous voice called out as a relatively young woman with short, slightly curly, light hair and ram's horns on her head walked through the large classroom door. The woman's face had a drowsy appearance, as if she were mentally checked out. Keeping up the hero motif the school had going on, the woman was dressed in a hero costume. The said hero costume consisted of a Chinese Cheongsam mini dress with long funnel-shaped sleeves that hid her hands, high-heeled shoes, and a domino mask that covered over half her face. Stepping behind the lone podium in the front, the woman turned to us with a bored expression. Her eyes quickly scanned each and every single one of us. "My name is Shinwae Onimu. I will be your homeroom teacher from today onward." "Hey, isn't that the pro hero, Moonlight?" one of my classmates said in awe. Like a domino effect, his comment caused a wave of whispers and chatter. "She used to be Ingenium's sidekick. Why is she here? Settle down. Settle down. Why did I let Ingenium talk me into this?" Onimu muttered under her breath as she leaned on the podium. At the homeroom teacher's instruction, Everyone quickly stopped talking. We have some time before the entrance ceremony, so why don't you all introduce yourselves to each other? Let's start over here and go down the line. No problem. Rising to his feet, a brown-haired male student turned to us and grinned. The name is Ishimoto Keiichi. My quirk is called Animal Shifter. I can transform into any animal I want for a full 60 seconds. How awesome is that? Everyone in the class, except for me, clapped and eagerly asked Keiichi questions about his quirk, much to his delight. Following that, each student began introducing themselves and explaining their quirks. For the few heteromorphic students in my class, they described their abilities instead. Eventually, it was my turn. With a sigh, I stood up and stared up at the ceiling. I'm Shimizu Sauta. Unlike you all, I don't have a quirk. But what I do have are these hands. They're rated E for everyone. I raised my fists and wiggled them. What else? Let's see. I also like coffee. 5 times 20 is equal to plus 100 SP. Ooh, not bad. Maybe I should say some more out-of-pocket shit around here. With my introduction done, I sat back down and took in the surprised looks from everyone around me. Their expressions weren't anything I hadn't seen before. After all, meeting a quirkless individual was rather rare these days. I was even able to pick up some frowns and looks of an interest. I'm next. Jumping to her feet, Himiko stole everyone's attention from me and began her introduction. My name is Toga Himiko. I can't wait to be friends with everyone. My quirk is called Transform. As long as I can drink someone's blood, I can take on their physical appearance, as well as copy their voice. At the description of her quirk, I saw some disgusted looks thrown Himiko's way, while some of our classmates looked intrigued. Our homeroom teacher had a pensive look as she smiled at Himiko. It seems she was able to pick up on the potential of Himiko's quirk. After Himiko's introduction, I lost interest in listening anymore. Once everyone was done with their introductions, Onimu got everyone moving out of the classroom to begin heading to the school's large auditorium for the entrance ceremony. Standing with my class, I looked over to the large podium at the back of the auditorium, where a small white bear, mouse, and dog-looking chimera stood. Off behind him were other pro-heroes, such as Recovery Girl, 13, Hound Dog, Present MIC, Midnight, Cementos, and many more. Hello to you all. I am Nezu, and I will be your principal for the next 3 years. You can call me Principal or Principal Nezu. Either is fine with me. Haha. Nezu said into a microphone with a smile. Now then, let's get things underway.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.